in life, with the new Prince of Wales convincing his wayward brother Prince Harry and his wife Meghan to join him and Kate to greet mourners at Windsor. We'll be live here until midnight with members of our regular family and an esteemed panel of royal experts, including Lady Victoria Harvey, Ingrid Tarrant, Angela Levin and John Sargent, to discuss the latest talking points sparked by the dawn of our country's new era. On the way, at an extraordinary time of transition and tumult, I'll explain in my digest next why William's olive branch to his estranged brother was critical for a grieving nation. This morning, we the people bore witness to the official proclamation of a monarch at the Ascension Council for the very first time. Dame Arlene Foster was actually in St James's Palace for that historic occasion. She'll reveal what it was like to be in the presence of that extraordinary lineup of the nation's political elite and a grieving king. She's live at 10:25. Today, I return to Buckingham Palace to pay my own tribute to a woman I loved with all of my heart as we learn more details of how we will all bid a final farewell to our beloved Queen Elizabeth II. Esteemed royal writers Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier break down the details of Her Majesty's funeral at 9:20. Plus, the King's former butler Grant Harold discusses working for the most powerful man in the world at 9:30. But first, I want to kick off the show by crossing live to Buckingham Palace, where we're joined by our Home and Security editor, Mark White, on an incredible day in royal history. In fact, let's do that after the news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. Buckingham Palace has confirmed the state funeral of the Queen will take place at Westminster Abbey on Monday, the 19th of September at 11 a.m. Tomorrow, Her Majesty's coffin will be driven from her Balmoral estate to Edinburgh, where she will lie in state. The coffin will then be flown to London, where it will be taken to Westminster Hall for 4 days, where members of the public will be able to pay their respects. Following the state funeral, the Queen will be taken to St George's Chapel in Windsor, where she will be buried. Earlier today, the King approved that the day of the funeral will be a bank holiday. This morning, King Charles III was formally proclaimed the nation's new monarch and paid tribute to his late mother, saying her reign was unequalled.
God save the King!
Ahead of the pomp and pageantry, he made a personal declaration and oath at the historic Accession Council meeting, which was televised for the first time. King Charles spoke of the duties that lay ahead of him and vowed to follow the Queen's inspiring example.
I'm deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony and prosperity of the peoples of these islands.
The new Prince and Princess of Wales were joined by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to greet well-wishers at Windsor Castle. The four royals spent time speaking to the crowd and looking at flowers laid in memory. Earlier, Kensington Palace released a statement on behalf of Prince William, reading, "It will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real." King Charles III has met with Prime Minister Liz Truss and her cabinet, as well as opposition party leaders. The King also hosted members of the clergy, including Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. It follows the Prime Minister's first audience with the new King yesterday. Downing Street says Miss Truss will join King Charles on a tour of Britain's 4 nations to lead the national mourning from Monday. Former Prime Minister David Cameron has paid tribute to the late Queen. He was one of the many past leaders present at the Accession Council ceremony, where King Charles was formally proclaimed monarch. Mr Cameron was the 12th Prime Minister to be in office during the Queen's 70-year reign. He says it's been a privilege to be British in the great Elizabethan age.
We've lost the world's greatest public servant. We've lost the world's greatest diplomat. We're still going to be finding out just what we had and just what we lost, I think, for many weeks, months and years to come. It's been an extraordinary privilege to be British in this great Elizabethan age.
David Cameron speaking there. This is GB News.
Today, Prince William showed why one day he will be a great king. The newly installed Prince of Wales provided a grieving nation the type of unity from his family of which the Queen would have most certainly approved. After years of acrimony, even including awkward counter-briefings as the Queen lay on her deathbed this week, William invited his wayward brother Prince Harry and his royal trashing wife Meghan to join him and his wife Kate to greet the mourners at Windsor. The result was a surprise reunion of the warring Windsors, formerly known as the Fab Four. It was quite a moment. Of course, today's public appearance doesn't change the fundamentals. Harry is still intending to release his autobiography, expected to include public criticism of the new King and Queen. Meghan has still made a series of threats to tell all about the institution, following a series of mistruths in a number of interviews to publicise her commercial ventures. But what today's act of kindness by Will shows is that the royal family under Charles III will not engage in a tat-for-tat with the Sussexes. That was clear, the new monarch's expression of love for Harry and Meghan in his first address as king last night. And after such an olive branch from Charles and William, the ball is now in the court of the Sussexes to show they will put the institution, the country, the Commonwealth and the memory of the Queen ahead of their personal vendettas. I hope and pray they do the right thing. Sadly, given their past behaviour, which cannot be easily forgotten, I have my doubts. But if yesterday was the day King Charles won over the public as he outlined welcome plans for an apolitical approach to his reign, today belonged to William. In just 247 words released this afternoon, this truly modern royal showed why he will be an asset to his father. And I actually want to share them with you in full, because they're worthy of that. So in his statement, William wrote, "On Thursday, the world lost an extraordinary leader whose commitment to the country, the realms and the Commonwealth was absolute. So much will be said in the days ahead about the meaning of her historic reign. I, however, have lost a grandmother. And while I will grieve her loss, I also feel incredibly grateful. I have had the benefits of the Queen's wisdom and reassurance into my 5th decade. My wife has had 20 years of her guidance and support. My 3 children have got to spend holidays with her and create memories that will last their whole lives. She was by my side at my happiest moments, and she was by my side during the saddest days of my life. I knew this day would come, but it will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real. I thank her for the kindness she showed my family and me. And I thank her on behalf of my generation for providing an example of service and dignity in public life that was from a different age, but always relevant to us all. My grandmother famously said that grief was the price we pay for love. All of the sadness we will feel in the coming weeks will be testament to the love we felt for our extraordinary Queen. I will honour her memory by supporting my father, the King, in every way I can." Just beautiful. while today's joint appearance was a positive sign, I think we need to see the same sort of public pledge from Harry to stand behind his father and the new Queen, and I hope that is forthcoming in the days to come. At an extraordinary time of transition and tumult, anything less, I believe, would be a betrayal of the British public. To respond now, I'm joined by an esteemed panel of royal experts and commentators with an unrivalled insight into the monarchy spanning decades. The socialite and aristocrat Lady Victoria Harvey, the royal author Angela Levin, and the broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant. Now, Angela, of course, you were Prince Harry's formal biographer before he met Meghan. What did you make of that extraordinary moment today when he took the olive branch from Prince William and greeted the mourners together?
I was absolutely astonished, and for a while I couldn't really work it out. I thought, you know, was he really passing over an olive branch when the two of them have been so hideous at a time when they knew that Harry's grandmother was so ill, and also to his father, William and Harry's father. And then I thought, well, it could be two things. One is what you said, that they're not going to do tit for tat. But the other one that I thought it could be was that they would want to clear themselves. They don't want anybody complaining that they didn't make an effort. So they did make an effort, a huge effort. And you could see it was extremely awkward. Catherine, who's usually so chatty and warm, she was right over past William and didn't really look. She just looked ahead. And I thought it was that if Harry and Meghan don't take that to make a change, and Harry brings out his memoirs, and Meghan, who has said, you know, I can say what I like, I didn't say anything, then their popularity will sink through the floor, because no one could take that sort of behaviour when the family had had such an enormous loss.
Lady Victoria Harvey, it was a historic moment. It felt important for the country. Did you buy into it?
I think it was very important for everybody to see them together, to show that unity. It's something that I'm sure that the Queen has been wanting for a very long time. And, you know, it happened. It was a surprise. And I think hopefully Harry will continue this with Meghan, and they will start making a big effort to show solidarity to their father now.
Ingrid Tarrant, it's obviously a shame it took the Queen's death to make Harry realise that, given that earlier this week he was actually briefing, or Meghan was briefing via their favourite little mouthpiece, that odd guy Omid Scobie, that he didn't even want to see any members of the royal family, including the Queen, on their trip to the UK. But I understand grief brings families together at times, and I hope that is one of these moments.
Yeah, very much so. It does. It's you know, in the big scheme of things, that's far greater, and it becomes quite petty, and you just have to do that. I had a similar situation with my brother, funny enough, and on my mother's deathbed, it was like, you know, it's fine. And I said to my mother, we're all here with you, and we're all friends. Don't ever worry. And that was that. It was terribly important that she knew that as well. Yes, I hope that this is the beginning of repairing, but I'm not so sure that it will be. I think it was a very good and positive gesture, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. But it's purely for the sake of the now, and I think it helps to repair a little bit of the pain from losing the Queen, and just everybody's feeling a little bit sort of disjointed and a bit lost at the moment. So it's actually quite nice and significant and quite symbolic, but I'm not too sure that it's enduring.
OK. Then we had Prince William's historic statement, and Angela Levin, I have to say, it was a tough act to follow the King's speech last night, but William's statement really touched me. I mean, I'm the same age as William. He spoke about the way that the Queen represented something very special for our generation, and She certainly did. I thought it was a really poignant piece of writing from the new Prince of Wales.
Yeah, I thought it's incredibly moving, and I thought it covered a very wide area, really, because he talked about himself and Catherine, he talked about the children who had benefited so much, he talked about the fact that, you know, grief is one of those things that comes out of loving somebody, and you have to sort of work on that. And then all the things he'd learned from her and admired, and the manners and the way she's behaved, the way she's conducted herself, which has been very difficult for a young man who had quite a dysfunctional background and was very, very angry with the world. We've sort of forgotten that because he's got so mature and happy in his personal life. But what I thought was incredibly interesting was the last line, when he said that the way he really wants to honour his mother is to do everything he can to support his father. Now, we know that Prince William didn't get on well with his father for quite a long time, but I think that as maturity his maturity has grown, and that he has very common interests with his father, like climate change and plastics, and it looks as if he's going to really support him. And I think we'll find that the monarchy is quite different, that Prince Charles, who recognises his age, but although he's very, very fit, will want a young voice to help him to move forward. And I think that William will provide that. So although King Charles will be king and respected for that, William will be involved in a lot of things. We saw that with the trouble with Harry. We've seen that over climate change. And I'm sure that that will really help to get a fantastic monarchy with two people who are absolutely dedicated to the country and to the Commonwealth.
Lady Victoria Harvey, you obviously saw Prince William develop and deal with the incredible loss of his mother, and he really has come into his own as an adult, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, I think he really has. You know, they've all had obviously their whole lives to grow into their roles respectively. You know, Catherine as well, I think she's really become, you know, a true princess. And it's going to be interesting now to see it all develop. And William showing that he's properly backing his father. And I think it will next be interesting to see if Harry will step up to it and do the same.
Ingrid Tarrant, what's your take on the development of Prince William?
I'm very impressed. He has really grown from a young boy almost into a man. I do think that a lot of it is to do with being married, being a father. He's got those responsibilities in itself. In everyday life, that's a big responsibility. And I think it starts to go hand in glove with the responsibilities that he is now having to bear as a prince, as very closer to being the heir to the throne. Also, Prince of Wales now. So I think he's really quite fantastic. And I think he will bring that family forward. He's the slightly modern version. He's bringing it a little bit forward more into our generation, or not our generation, sorry, I forget how old I am. But you know what I mean. But still maintaining traditional values, strong morals, and I think he's just going to be brilliant, and I think he's just going to grow and grow, and the responsibility. You know, I will say one thing here as well. It's quite hard for Prince Charles. Oh, King Charles, I'm sorry, I was never going to do that, and I've just gone and done it. Because he's just got 2 children, and actually to support him, but he hasn't really got Harry, and I'm not sure that Harry's going to step up. I think that life in America is going to be the life in America, the new life that King Charles was referring to, almost as saying, and you know, and I wish you luck in your new life. I think it's almost like saying goodbye, that's it. So he's only really got William, whereas
he's
the Queen
got Camilla.
Oh, he's got Camilla, yes. But the Queen had 4 children and Philip. So, you know, there's an awful lot on King Charles's shoulders, really.
There is indeed. Ingrid Tarrant, Angela Levin, and Lady Victoria Harvey. So great to have all of you here, and of course you are staying with us until midnight tonight. Breaking tonight, Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the nation will bid farewell to our spiritual grandmother Elizabeth II in a funeral at Westminster Abbey on Monday, September the 19th, after the late Queen lies in state for 4 days at Westminster Hall. Earlier today, her heir, Charles III, confirmed the occasion would be made a public holiday during his official proclamation as the King at the Accession Council. The ancient event at St James's Palace was televised for the first time in history and saw the country's royal, political and religious elite, including an astonishing lineup of former prime ministers, sign the Accession Proclamation confirming the new monarch. In a later part of the ceremony, King Charles once again commemorated his lost mother at what was effectively the first meeting of the Privy Council of his reign.
My mother gave an example of lifelong love and of selfless service. My mother's reign was unequalled in its duration, its dedication and its devotion. In all this, I am profoundly encouraged by the constant support of my beloved wife.
God save the King.
God save the King.
3 cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Following the proclamation, a selection of MPs, including Prime Minister Liz Truss and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, pledged their allegiance to the new King during an extraordinary Saturday sitting of Parliament.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
To His Majesty King Charles,
His heirs and successors according to law.
so help me God.
So, to make sense of this day of ceremony and tradition that has until this point of history been hidden from public view, let me bring in esteemed royal authors Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. So, Lady Colin Campbell, I want to start by looking at the funeral plans. Obviously, as expected, Monday, the 19th of September, it will be a bank holiday. Was there anything else in the information released by the palace today that surprised you?
Not particularly, I hate to say, sorry. It was all very expected. It follows a format, and it follows a very good and tried and true format.
And Phil Dampier, the Queen, we believe, had approved virtually every detail of her funeral.
Yeah, it's all been planned for years, Dan, but obviously the fact that she died in Scotland as opposed to Windsor Castle or Buckingham Palace did make it slightly different. Originally, we thought she was going to come down on the royal train when her body has finally come back, but I think they're going to do it with the plane because it'll save a bit of time. And I think originally she was going to be lying at Westminster Hall for 3 days, and now maybe they can make that 4 days because they're anticipating that so many people will want to file past the coffin. So that's one of the tweaks that they've done, and I think it's a good idea. And also the fact that she's going to be overnighting in Edinburgh, first of all at Holyrood, the palace there, and then at St Giles Church. And that will enable Scottish people, Scots, to pay their respects as well, when, of course, we all know how fond of Scotland she was, and that's where she died. So it's going to be a very sad day tomorrow when she leaves Balmoral for the first time, for the last time rather, place that she absolutely adored. Her family are going to go with her. I'm sure Prince Andrew and the others Princess Anne will go with her, accompany her to Edinburgh, and they'll probably escort her all the way back. So they're going to be with her. And Prince Andrew talked very movingly today about how they've been able to be with her for a day, and then they've got to start the process of moving it all on. So yeah, it's going to be an extraordinary week, and Charles is going to go around the country to Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, as well as England, proclaiming himself as king. So it's very much a case of, the Queen is dead, long live the King. That's the way it has to be.
Lady Colin Campbell, how important was it that the Accession Council was televised for the first time? We actually got to see inside this incredible historic moment.
I thought it was perfect and wonderful and very appropriate. You know, it's a very historical thing, and it's in my opinion quite wonderful that because of television everybody else can share in it. So it's not just for a handful of people, it's for all the people. And I thought it's very historical, it's very traditional, it follows a format that has been evolved over the centuries. And I thought it was very interesting that people could actually share in it. I'm all in favor of the monarchy opening up so that people can understand that it is in our interests, our being the people's interests, and that the monarchy is there to preserve our liberties, our freedoms, and to represent us, all the people, even the people who do not support it.
Phil Dampier, we did just see a flash of the King's famous temper there, didn't he, when something wasn't laid out appropriately in terms of the pens on the table, and he made very clear that he immediately wanted it moved. I mean, Phil, this is a man, I guess, who is very much aware of every detail and the fact that what's going on should be perfect.
Yeah, he is a bit of a perfectionist. You can see that by the way he dresses. And apparently that inkwell that he was using was a gift from William and Harry. So he's obviously very proud of that. But as you say, the table was getting a bit crowded. He didn't seem to have enough room to write Charles Charles Rex, as he now assigns himself. So he gestured to this aide to take the perseverant pen pusher, I suppose you might call him, to take away the pens. And he didn't do it quickly enough, and he didn't look very happy. He seemed to grimace at him, whereas he started smiling at him. So people are saying this guy might be sent to the Tower for not removing the pens quickly enough. But I thought Penny Mordaunt did very well as the sort of compere of proceedings. There were some very nice touches, and the fact that we could see all this, as Lady C says, and see it all on TV, made it absolutely fascinating to watch.
I know it was just another extraordinary twist, actually, that if this had taken place just a few days ago, it would have been Jacob Rees-Mogg who was in that role. But because of Penny Mordaunt's new job in the Truss administration, even though she formally hadn't been sworn in, there she was at this moment in history. I think, Lady C, the first female to effectively swear in the new monarch for over 1,000 years.
Isn't it wonderful? And it shows that we are truly the greatest nation on earth. We've had, until recently, a female head of state. We have a female head of government. You know, we have been to the forefront of practically every positive change in the 20th and 21st century. And I think we as British people should exult in our success.
So much has happened today. So, of course, we got all of that formality in the morning. But perhaps what the country is talking about most is that quite unexpected walkabout, Phil Dampier, between the warring brothers, Prince William and Prince Harry, came together with their two wives. Phil, this was the first time we'd actually seen them in public together since that very awkward Commonwealth Day service right back in March 2020, just a few weeks after Megxit had been announced. Phil, how did this all come about? What did you make of it? And does this represent a new start between William and Harry?
Well, I hope it represents a new start. Nobody expected it. I mean, my jaw absolutely dropped when I saw it, as I'm sure it did with all royal watchers, and nobody had a clue it was going to happen. And it was absolutely remarkable. And as you say, it seems like Prince William offered the olive branch and it was taken. I think that shows William as a very big man. He's clearly taken a leaf out of the Queen's textbook. When you think about it, the Queen shook hands with Martin McGuinness of the IRA. She entertained people like Vladimir Putin to state banquets, Nicolae Ceausescu of Romania, dictator. And she was prepared to meet people and deal with people for the common good. And as you say, the one sadness is that if this does bring them together, it didn't happen while she was alive. But she seems to be bringing people together in death as she was in life. But I think Harry and Meghan probably saw it as an opportunity to test the water. I was quite surprised that they didn't get some abuse and a few people perhaps booing them. Everyone seemed to be very fair to them and sort of greeted them quite warmly. And I think now that she's seen that happen, I think it's more likely than it was before that Meghan will go to the funeral. I had my doubts that she was going to go. She might have flown home or not taken part, but I think now she will go because she's probably seen that she can be part of the Fab Four again. But of course, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating in months to come. I think you've already written down, if he still brings out his book, Harry, and chucks another load of insults, it's going to all flare up again. So let's hope that he drops the book and they start to have a genuine reconciliation. But only time will tell.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Lady Colin Campbell? Everything that's gone on, especially the past few weeks, can't just be forgotten. I mean, remember, it was literally just a few days ago that Harry and Meghan's mouthpiece, that odd little bloke, Omid Scobie, who just seems to put out whatever they want, was...
His name is Omid Scabies.
You said that, Lady C, not me. But he was saying that Meghan and Harry didn't want to see any member of the royal family on their visit, not even the Queen. I mean, that was this week that was briefed out, Lady C. So not everything can be forgotten. I actually think what we need to see is Prince Harry make a formal statement like William did today, pledging his support and commitment to King Charles III. And then, Lady C, he has to pull the autobiography, which is going to trash Charles and Camilla. He has to pulp those books. If he releases that book, it's hard to see that there's any way back.
Well, I have to tell you, my information is, and I think it's most likely very sound, is that Prince William and the King wanted the focus to be on the Queen and the Queen's legacy, the Queen's reign, and to smooth over all issues. And I think they have done that by inviting Harry and Meghan. There are things behind the scenes which I'm not prepared to go into at this point that actually are rather less, I'm not quite sure what the word would be, less encouraging, let's say that, encouraging than you might appear to believe. But the reality is this was a carefully orchestrated thing, thanks to the King and the Prince of Wales, so that the focus would remain on the Queen, the Queen's legacy, the Queen's reign, the Queen's departure, that we say goodbye to our beloved Queen without the distraction of the dog and pony show that has been Meghan and Harry. And I have to tell you, it would appear continues to be Meghan and Harry. But I'm not going to go into that now because it's not come up yet. And I would prefer that I'm not the person who brings it up. But the fact of the matter is that what was supposed to have been a perfectly anodyne and reparative appearance by the four of them, Meghan has yet again pulled a hat trick, which I will not go into since nobody has noticed it. But take it from me, I have been speaking to people, including royals behind the scenes, and everybody is furious at what's happening. But since nobody has noticed it, let's draw a veil over it. It's supposed to be everybody, the four of them together, that it's not the dog and pony show of Meghan and Harry. It is, the focus is on the Queen. But Meghan has pulled another stunt. And I think it's only a matter of time before it is realized the stunt that she has pulled. And there is genuine outrage behind the scenes that she would have done this. But hopefully it won't see the light of day and we can move on. And if it sees the light of day, hopefully it will be after the Queen is buried. This is about our beloved Queen. This is about King Charles III, who is so going to be a wonderful monarch. This is about the Prince of Wales, the former Prince William, who is going to be a wonderful Prince of Wales and a wonderful monarch. And it is outrageous that Meghan has done what she has done. Hopefully, nobody else has noticed it, but the few people in certain royal circles who have noticed it. But it is beyond belief if people notice it. And more than that, I would prefer not to say it at this point. But this was supposed to be a reparative where there was supposed to be unity, where Prince William and King Charles, sorry, not Prince Charles.
We're all getting used to that, I know.
And this was supposed to be about unity, and she has yet again pulled a hat trick, and hopefully it will not be noticed by the public, and the press will not say what it is, and everything will be all right, and we will get through the next several days with not only the appearance of unity, but without this becoming about Meghan and Harry, especially Meghan, because this is supposed to be about the Queen and King Charles III and the present Prince of Wales. Meghan and Harry are nothing except minor players, and hopefully they will remain that.
Fascinating stuff from our esteemed royal authors, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Thank you. We will speak to you both tomorrow night. But breaking tonight, the Prime Minister Liz Truss will join King Charles as he leads services of reflection around the United Kingdom. Downing Street confirmed the PM would travel with the King to Scotland on Monday, followed by visits to Northern Ireland on Tuesday and Wales on Friday. Well, joining me now is someone who's spent plenty of time in the company of our great nation's ruler from 2004 until 2011. Grant Harold served as a butler to King Charles while he was still the Prince of Wales and the late Queen Elizabeth's heir. Having served him faithfully for so many years, Grant has a unique insight into how our King will in turn serve his country. And it is great to have Grant with us today. Grant, there was a fascinating moment during the Ascension Council today when Prince Charles wasn't happy with the layout on the table and a certain pen in front of him, and his facial expression illustrated that he wanted change, mate. I imagine you're very familiar with that facial expression, Grant.
Good evening, Dan. Thank you for being on. It's funny you've mentioned this. I've just been having a conversation with another member of the royal household about this very thing, because it was priceless. I mean, I think the problem is the eyes of the world are on, I say the poor King because obviously it's difficult. He's lost his mother. He's taken on this new role, and the eyes of the world are watching every move. And unfortunately, when they're watching every move, when you're having a moment of trouble, it's picked up upon. And there's been a few videos shared on a social media site that I probably shouldn't mention. And it's quite, they've put some music to it, and it's quite funny. I think he would even find it funny. But see, at the time, it's difficult because obviously he's trying to sign the proclamation. There's things around him. I was told that the inkwell, which I believe is a gift from his sons, but it probably should have been on another table. And obviously there's been a bit of a mistake there because you can see there's not a lot of room on the table. So I think that's why, and he probably knew that, and that's probably why he was trying to gesture that because somebody could suddenly take it away. But I did feel for him actually when I saw that.
Well, indeed, and Grant, he has coped admirably these last few days. I mean, for most of us, when we lose a close member of our family, we hibernate, don't we, from the world? As Prince Andrew said earlier today, the rest of the family have had at least 24 hours alone with the Queen at Balmoral. That wasn't possible for King Charles, but I guess he has been preparing for this moment for many years.
Do you know, it's interesting because I in the last few years I've lost my own parents, and I know what you mean,
Sorry.
Dan. You just need time to shut down. You need a few weeks just to get away from it, just to kind of take it in and get through a funeral. But for him, he doesn't have that luxury because, the Queen is dead, long live the King, and that's exactly what happens. There is always a monarch, and he has to go into that role from, within hours. He's got to be kind of, obviously people want to see him. And, it's interesting. He's trying to, you can see he's trying to do the job. He's obviously trying to smile. He's trying to be humorous. He's trying to obviously make jokes. He's trying to be himself. But it's difficult because obviously, he, regardless of age, he has a son, and he's grieving. He'll be worried about his own brothers and sister, and worrying about his own children. And which is also why I've got to say I was quite glad when I saw the Fab Four, if I can say that. I was glad when I saw them all come out, so that's really good. It will give him a bit of encouragement and a bit of a support, because right now the royal family have to support each other, and even though he's now the head of that family, he'll need support, and not just from the family. I know for a fact, as a former member of his staff are very loyal and very protective, and he'll get that from his staff as well, from his butlers and his team that's around him.
Grant, what's King Charles like as a human being? I mean, we hear all the stories about how particular he is and the fact that he likes his eggs cooked in a certain way, and he takes a toilet seat with him when he's staying in someone's house. He demands particular colours on the wall. That paints a certain picture, but is that unfair? Are we missing something about King Charles?
I think everyone should take a toilet seat with them. I always do. I don't actually know about that one, to be honest with you. But do you know, there is this thing about him being eccentric. There's a thing about talking to plants. I should actually say in his defence, he does, and he's actually discussed it with Alan Titchmarsh, that he does talk to plants, and I've got to say I now also do it, and I think it does somehow encourage them. But there is a bit of an unfair side, because I think people kind of think they don't know the real him. And what's difficult for me, Dan, is I do know the real him, and obviously I want to keep a little bit of discretion, because I admire him. I think they deserve their privacy. But at the same time, I'm keen to kind of say to people that he is a kind man. He's generous. He's down to earth. He's funny. He's witty. When I say he's funny, if I could give you a quick example, I remember when I started working for him in Scotland. Ironically, a lot of my stories, for some reason, are based in Scotland, and I'm not trying to be biased, but I think I spent a lot of time up there with the royal family. And I remember this one occasion, quite soon after I started, and I panicked because I didn't know what the protocol was when you meet the prince. And I was in Beck Hall, which is the house that he's just come down from in Scotland. And there was this long corridor, and there was a door on my right. And I remember when I saw the prince and the Duchess, I panicked and I didn't know what to do. So I went into I thought it was a room, but it was a cupboard. It was a tiny cupboard. I remember it being a storage cupboard, and it made the most awful noise. I think there was like bottles rattling and things. And I remember thinking, oh, he won't know that I'm hiding in a cupboard. But he saw, and so much so that he walked up to the cupboard, and I could hear him saying to the Duchess, "Do you think he's okay? And what do you think he's doing?" And which point I thought, yes, I better come out of this cupboard. So I opened the door, pretended not to see them, and there was a door opposite, and I opened the door opposite, and thankfully there was a staircase. So I kind of did this bit of theatrical where I shut the door and kind of spun over to the other side, and then I happened to notice that they were there, and I said, "Oh, good morning, Your Royal Highnesses," and they both just grinned at me and said good morning. And then I bolted down the stairs, and by the time I got round to the butler's pantry, they had come in the other room and they were in hysterics, and they thought it was the funniest thing. And that's when I thought, wow, they've got good humour. And I should add, the Queen had equally the same amount of humour, which I absolutely loved.
Oh, that's a great story. How important is that relationship with Camilla? It's almost like he needs her to keep sane, to keep himself on the straight and narrow. She's going to be probably a more behind-the-scenes queen, but totally imperative to Charles.
She's, do you know what, Dan? She is his best friend. There's no question on that. I could see that from day one. They are best friends, as well as always been, if I can say, lovers, husband and wife, king and queen. They are best friends. They work as a team. They complement each other beautifully. And you're quite right. I've noticed, as you would have noticed, that over the last few days, few hours, she's been very quiet. She's been in the background, but she's with him. She's there to support him, which is exactly the role of the Queen Consort. So she's already doing that role beautifully within the last few hours. But she also brings out the best in him. And what I mean by that is, again, I've witnessed, I remember again doing events, and she would get the giggles. And for anyone wondering what I mean, if you can I use the word, if you Google the kind of laughter of the Prince, well, sorry, as they were, Prince Wales and Duchess of Cornwall, you'll immediately get clips of them. And what happens is she gets the giggles quite often, and I've been there when this happens, and then he gets the giggles, and he tries to remain composed, which is even funnier. And Dan, I can't tell you, when you're trying to do an official event and you're with them, and they suddenly get the giggles, all I can say is thank God for butler screens, because these are screens that sometimes in the rooms or where the venue is, and even myself and other butlers have had to go out the way because we get the giggles because they're laughing so much. And it's wonderful because, as I said, he has got a good sense of humour, but it even brings more of that out. And I think, it's wonderful to see them. And I think we're going to see that. I think going forward, I think there's going to be tradition and protocols that we saw today, but I think we're going to see that fun side. I think there's going to be more of that to come. I hope there is.
I hope so too. What a fascinating insight. So lovely to speak to you, former butler to King Charles when he was the Prince of Wales, Grant Harold. Now, yesterday, the world stopped to watch Charles III deliver his first address as king. His pitch-perfect yet sombre yet stirring speech from Buckingham Palace concluded with a dash of sentiment as he paid tribute to his darling mamma for her, quote, love and devotion. And in a rare peek behind the curtain, the royal family's official TikTok account posted a behind-the-scenes clip of the king immediately after his address, which, remember, came just 24 hours following his mum's passing, showing our new monarch tearing up and asking earnestly, am I done? That very deliberate release of the footage marks a deviation from the stiff upper lip approach that defined the monarchy for generations, for better or worse. The modern royal family is one that is slowly learning to show its emotions. William and Harry, of course, have spoken openly about their mental health struggles following the death of their mother, Princess Diana. And our late Queen Elizabeth always spoke of her great love for this country and its subjects. But with this candid display of vulnerability right at the start of his reign, can we expect Charles to be a more emotional ruler? Well, it's a delight to have my superstar panel along with me tonight on this special show. Former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy, the journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler, and the esteemed political journalist John Sargent. So, John, look, I thought Charles was pitch perfect last night. He allayed a lot of the doubts that I had, the worries that I had. He made it clear he's going to be an apolitical king, for example, and let's now hold him to that. But I thought he did a great job. It's really interesting, though, isn't it, the way that I think since he's become king, he is leaning into his emotion. When he was outside Buckingham Palace, he was hugging folk. There were tears. Last night after the speech, that very emotional video, it feels like he's trying to signify the way that he will be different to the Queen.
Yes, I think that's right, and I think he's got to be careful. I think that you can quite easily go from that to being rather mawkish, and he's got to make sure that he's still very much in control and that he's not just suddenly the guy who says, God, it's tough being me, you know. We can't have that. We can't have our monarch being the victim. I mean, he's not the victim. He's in control. And if he's not in control, then he should try not to so much. I worry about both of them, really, because they are good on camera. They are good fun. And, you know, I know I've met her, I've met the Queen Consort, and I've spent an evening with her at a dinner, and she's really charming and marvellous and so on. But too much of that could go too far.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Belinda de Lucy? Do you like it, this new approach? Because to me, it's been purposeful and it has been to try and suggest that this is going to be a different type of monarchy under King Charles?
Yes, I mean, I think, the Queen was the unicorn of monarchs, incorruptible. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. She already seems like a dream to me, something, so pure and perfect. And I think it's unfair to put that on Charles. I mean, I don't know anyone who could fill those boots. But I do think he has something to bring to the table with showing a little bit of love and emotion. And remember, it was very subtle. I think he mentioned the word love 7 times in his speech, and he was teary-eyed, and that is what you'd expect when a man loses his mother. I think it's a great example to set, to be dignified and stoic and reserved, but also with a subtle show of emotion. As long as he keeps the subtlety and doesn't go sort of full into heart on my sleeve, as John said, poor me, poor me. He needs to avoid that at all costs. I think it's a perfect balance and a great example to everyone.
Because obviously, Sam, one of the things that people so respected about the Queen is she was always stoic. I mean, I think in her entire reign, we probably saw her shed a solitary tear on less than 5 occasions, a handful of occasions, including when the royal yacht was decommissioned. That was one of those occasions. Charles wears his heart on his sleeve. He is a more emotional man.
This is a different world that we live in now from when she first, came to be the Queen, and we all know that mental health is a massive thing and a massive problem, especially with men, for example, and suicide rates up across the board, and because we know that having a stiff upper lip and not sharing your problems is, can sometimes be a death sentence. So I think that this is a massively important moment, and as obviously it will be William after him, as the monarch gets younger, so will their attitude towards emotions and towards their relationship with the people, and this is like the starting block of that, I think.
But I think the problem is that a lot of the time they've got to be providing succour. They've got to be going to places and on occasions of serious tragedy. And they've got to then make sure that they keep themselves together. What you can't do is go to a major difficult scene where there are lots of people may have been killed or relatives affected. And
which would be obviously very sad,
okay.
but the man's just lost his mother. He's lost his mother, so therefore he has the ability to cry about it now.
No, I think that's absolutely fine.
Yes, but should he do that in public is the question.
I'm just saying that this is the work that they're about to enter. This is the job they've got to do is peculiarly affected by serious tragedy. This is actually, they're like, from that point of view, they're like health workers, they're like all sorts of people who have to come up against serious illness and difficulty.
And they have to keep their emotions in check, as you say. But I think that he will. What he's showing in this particular moment, as Dan said, they produced this video and on purpose so that we could see that he was emotional.
And I don't think that means he's going to cry every time he goes somewhere else.
You go to a children's hospital, which they will do. Of course. They will go to a children's hospital, and what normal person wouldn't, in fact, crack up? So the point is they've got to somehow manage not to go too... That's all I'm saying. Of course it's normal. They're admirable people. I'm not saying that. Of course he should show his emotion at personal time. But he's being asked to deliberately go to places to provide help and strength.
But it's also important to be able to show that you're an emotional person. So as I just said, especially for men... Especially for men, especially a man of his age, to show that he is an emotional person at a time like this.
Sam, I worry a little bit that sometimes we're all encouraged to show far too much emotion these days. And sometimes, Belinda de Lucy, it's good to keep emotions behind closed doors. I'm not saying in all occasions, but I think, look, I'm not being critical. I just found it surprising, Belinda, that was an official video released by the palace, almost as if they're wanting to say to the world, look, this is going to be different. Here's the real man. He was in tears after this speech. It feels like a change of strategy.
Well, what I liked about King Charles's speech is that it wasn't all about him. I think the problem with constantly showing your emotion is you make every event about yourself and how you're reacting and how you're feeling. And it's one thing I teach my girls, have coping mechanisms, be the strong one in front of those who are vulnerable, and that's what we look to in our king. And our queen, the queen, you know, it wasn't all about her. She had all the grandeur and the glory, but her reign wasn't about her. It was about what she gave to other people. And as much as, you know, I agree with Sam, the sentiment that we need male role models to show that they can be vulnerable, I'm not sure that's the job of a king. And I think it's a little bit distasteful, especially while so many people are, you know, are suffering much harder lives in the country, to see a man with such privilege, you know, complaining. I mean, he didn't, but if he goes down
his mum just died.
That's what I mean. He was very subtle, though, today, and I thought that was perfect. But I don't want him to go down the route.
There are lots of times when he's got to show concern, obviously. He will do that because he'll feel concern, and it'll be true, and it'll be authentic, and it'll be impressive. But he's also got to say, but we can get through. We can get through this.
Well, this is the backstage thing. That's the whole point. Like he did his speech. This was like you know.
And I guess John,
the
question for me is, will the royal family one day perhaps regret releasing that video? Because we know
they won't do that again
with the Queen, that she had massive regrets when she invited the BBC cameras to film effectively the world's first reality TV show, revealing a lot of behind-the-scenes life in the royal family. She actually regretted that forever, and we're not allowed to view the footage. So it's just going to be interesting to see if King Charles, having a TikTok account, posting behind-the-scenes clips, I guess illustrates some sort of evolution in terms of how the royal family want to be seen.
He's not weeping though, is he? He's not sat there, head in hands.
Or rocking in the corner.
Yeah,
I thought he was still quite
as somebody who's lost a parent, it is devastating.
Yeah.
And this is 2 days after his mother's just died. So of course he's going.
No, indeed.
And people want to see that.
And Sam, to be honest, I actually thought the emotion during the speech was beautiful, actually. And I have nothing critical to say about the speech. I just personally wonder if they want to go down the celebrity path of releasing behind-the-scenes footage. But, John, there's one other thing I want to pick up on, because this is an unenviable task for King Charles in so many ways, because you rightly point out this is a guy who lots of people know, we know lots about him. He's had so many years as the Prince of Wales. Now at 73, it's very difficult to hold aspects of yourself back, isn't it?
It is going to be very difficult, but at least every time he speaks formally about this, he makes it absolutely clear that of course he understands his role, of course he's going to try as much as he can to follow the example of his mother. So there's no doubt about what he would like to do and what he appears determined to do. Can he pull it off? Well, that is the difficulty, because people with strong feelings about climate change, about all the environmental issues, they say, OK, I won't go on about this, I won't be a campaigner. But there are moments in all the problems that he's got to cope with, and nowadays, all these unscripted meetings and all these moments where someone may say something to him which he just so disagrees with that he may just say, I just don't agree with you. Why don't you read this? Why don't you read my speeches? Or why don't you do this? And that would also be very natural, very understandable. You've got to have an extraordinary level of discipline, which the Queen had. He's now got to have.
I know. And Belinda, that's why for so many years, critics like me were urging the then Prince Charles, please don't wade into politics, because you are going to be king soon, and this is going to make it more difficult for you. I mean, literally, Belinda, it was in June that the now King Charles was briefing against the government's Rwanda policy, for example. So, look, I think he's had a very good start, Belinda, but the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating.
Well, it is, but I also wonder whether Prince Charles had a feeling that he might lose his mother soon, so wanted to pack into the short time he had left every single political feeling that he could, because he knew as soon as his mother had died, that was it. He had to zip it, basically. And I wonder whether that's why there was that big push. I was surprised, though. His Jubilee speech was very warm and emotional, and nothing as I expected. His son William then followed with the sort of the green preaching speech, and Charles was left with this wonderful dignified speech. He called his mother mummy, and I saw a different side to him. So I thought he was at
Well, I have a slight worry that it might be Prince William now as the Prince of Wales, who goes down that political path. Belinda Lucy, Sam Dowler, John Sargent, thank you so much, my superstar panel, and they're with me until midnight. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, in another 3-hour live special, we continue to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth the Great and the extraordinary start of the reign of King Charles III. But what a tragedy that it was only in death that our wonderful late Queen could bring the new Prince of Wales and his brother Prince Harry back together. A united front is critical right now for the sake of the monarchy, but is it going to be possible to bring the Sussexes back into the fold to avoid further damage to the royal family? We'll discuss next with our panel of esteemed royal experts, including Lady Victoria Harvey and Ingrid Tarrant, and favourite members of our GB News family. And at 11:25, we'll cross the US, where royal commentator Kinsey Schofield has details of how Meghan has cancelled her upcoming commercial endeavours in a bid to pay tribute to the Queen. It's been a day like no other in history. For the first time, the people of this country and beyond bore witness to the official proclamation of a king.
Bless His Majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. God save the King.
God save the King!
There for that momentous occasion was Dame Arlene Foster. She'll reveal what went on when royalty and political nemesis all met in one room at 10:25. And as it's confirmed, Queen Elizabeth's coffin will make an epic 6-hour journey from Balmoral to the Palace of Holyrood tomorrow before lying in state in Edinburgh. Will Her Majesty, taking her final breath in her beloved Scotland, allow unionism to flourish? We're going to discuss that at 10:40. So do stay with us until midnight as the country adapts to this historic transition. But first, breaking tonight, Parliament has just finished its extraordinary and rare Saturday sitting in which a selection of MPs, including Prime Minister Liz Truss, pledged allegiance to the newly proclaimed King Charles III. Joining me now live from Westminster is our political correspondent Tom Harwood. So it's been a busy day in Westminster, Tom, but I guess the most significant announcement is about the Queen's funeral details. We now know it will be a bank holiday, of course, but what else can you tell us, Tom?
Yes, starting with the 19th of September, we now know that to be the date of the funeral of the late Queen. A bank holiday nationally in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, but also the funeral to be held for the first time since George II in Westminster Abbey. Not in Windsor, but Westminster Abbey, a grander, larger venue to hold dignitaries and leaders from around the world. Up to 8,000 people can cram into that venue, and no doubt Westminster will become the focal point of these commemorations of the most remarkable reign, because preceding that funeral day, there'll be just over 4 days where the public will be able to see the coffin of the late Queen lying in state in Westminster Hall, that 1,000-year-old principal part of the Palace of Westminster, that building that has hosted the lying in state of the Queen Mother, of course, most recently, but also Winston Churchill. It's held both houses as they've listened to dignitaries from around the world, from Barack Obama to Nelson Mandela to Angela Merkel more recently. This building, this hall, this great hall, held the trial of Guy Fawkes, the trial of Charles I, and it will be the venue in which members of the public will be able to solemnly file past the coffin of Her Majesty the Queen 24 hours a day. I'm not sure if you can see behind me, it's pretty dark here in Westminster, but already a marquee is being constructed just by Cromwell Green. That will be the entrance through which the security can be done so that members of the public can be safe in going in to Westminster Hall and filing past. But of course, before then, the Queen's coffin will, as you say, make its way through Edinburgh. But also, the King will be travelling the country, first to Scotland, and then to Northern Ireland, and then to Wales, and then back to London, accompanied by the Prime Minister, we learn today. But rowing back to today, of course, there have been 10 hours of sitting in the Commons, reflecting the 10 hours that we saw yesterday of tributes from members of Parliament, so many of them who knew her, so many of them who say that actually whenever they visit a school in their constituencies, the first question that children ask them is, have you met the Queen? And so many of those stories we've heard with such colour and such vigour today. But also, Dan, as you rightly mention, the opportunity today for some senior members of Parliament to swear an oath to the new King. Whenever a member of Parliament becomes an MP, they swear or affirm an oath to the monarch. Now, most members of Parliament did that, of course, back in December 2019 after the general election. Notably, of course, the Irish nationalists, Sinn Féin, refused to take that oath and therefore do not take their seats in the House of Commons. But of course, that oath does include a line about heirs and successors. So those MPs that swore to Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, are still, of course, MPs, still with the right to sit in the House of Commons. What we heard today with the oath taken by a small sample of senior MPs wasn't necessary for them to continue to sit in the House of Commons, but it was another part of that pageantry, another proclamation, if you will, of their own faith in the new King. All MPs, given time in the coming days, will be able to take that oath too. But yes, a busy couple of days here in Westminster, and Westminster becoming a focal point for days to come.
The Liberal Democrats have cancelled their party conference tonight because it clashed with the Queen's funeral. Of course, Parliament was due to be suspended because of the Conservative and Labour Party conferences. Is that really practical and the right thing to happen, given that there's a lot of work to be done? You know, this energy bailout has to be pushed through. I believe you're hearing that the cancellation of the conference recess is actually now being seriously considered.
That's right, Dan. I spoke to a government minister a little bit earlier inside Parliament who told me that they had picked up rumour that this was an option being considered. If we remember back to 2019 and the big prorogation Supreme Court case, with the Supreme Court cancelling the prorogation of Parliament, that meant that Parliament was sitting during the Conservative Party conference, Boris Johnson's first Conservative Party conference as Prime Minister in October 2019. Well, there is now some talk in Westminster that a similar sort of thing could take place this potential conference recess, not having the recess, allowing those conferences to go ahead, but concurrently with a sitting House of Commons, a sort of scaled back version of these party conferences. Of course, the Liberal Democrats conference was due to start on the 17th of September, that Saturday, of course, 2 days before the funeral, during that period of national mourning. The Liberal Democrats today announcing formally that that will, of course, not take place. But the weekend after that is when the Labour Party conference is due to take place, and the weekend after that is when the Conservative Party conference is due to take place. Both sources in both parties saying they wish to find a way to accommodate those party conferences, so that suspension of recess may well be one option.
Thank you so much, Tom, our political correspondent live in Westminster. We're going to have the first of tomorrow's historic newspaper front pages coming up straight after the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. Buckingham Palace has confirmed the state funeral of the Queen will take place at Westminster Abbey on Monday, the 19th of September at 11 a.m. Tomorrow, Her Majesty's coffin will be driven from her Balmoral estate to Edinburgh, where she'll lie in state. The coffin will then be flown to London, where members of the public will have 4 days to pay their respects at Westminster Hall. Following the state funeral, the Queen will be taken to St George's Chapel in Windsor to be buried. The King has approved the day of the funeral will be a bank holiday. This morning, King Charles III was formally proclaimed the nation's new monarch, where he called his mother's reign unequalled.
God save the King.
Ahead of the pomp and pageantry at St James's Palace, he made a personal declaration and oath at the historic Accession Council meeting. King Charles spoke of the duties that lay ahead of him and vowed to follow the Queen's inspiring example.
I'm deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set.
The new Prince and Princess of Wales were joined by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to greet well-wishers at Windsor Castle. The four royals spent time speaking to the crowd and looking at flowers laid in memory. In a statement released by Kensington Palace, Prince William said it will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real. In Balmoral, members of the royal family have thanked the public for coming to pay their respects. 3 of the Queen's 4 children, the Princess Royal, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex, returned from a prayer service to read the tributes left by well-wishers. King Charles III has met with Prime Minister Liz Truss and her cabinet, as well as opposition party leaders. The King also hosted members of the clergy, including Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. It follows the Prime Minister's first audience with the new King yesterday. Downing Street says Miss Truss will join King Charles on a tour of Britain's 4 nations to lead the national mourning from Monday. MPs have taken an oath of allegiance to the new monarch.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God.
Parliament met for a rare Saturday sitting to allow MPs to pay tribute to the late Queen and to reflect on the life of Britain's longest reigning monarch. This is GB News.
Welcome back to our live special Saturday night coverage on the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And let's take a first look now at tomorrow's historic newspaper front pages. The Observer, now interestingly here, they're actually one of the few tomorrow to lead on King Charles, describing his, quote, heavy duties of sovereignty in their coverage of his official proclamation as king today. But I had a feeling this was where everyone else was going to go. The Sun on Sunday's headline, all for one, in reference to the surprise reunion of feuding Princes William and Harry and Kate and Meghan at Windsor Castle today. Together for Granny is the Sunday Express headline, with that picture of the former Fab Four reunited in Greece. The Daily Star celebrates Meghan, Harry, William and Kate coming together to, quote, in grief for the love of their granny. The Sunday Telegraph reads, reunited in sorrow. The paper marks the momentous occasion of the 2 brothers and their wives meeting in Windsor to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. And reunited for Granny. That's what the Sunday Mirror goes with too, noting the occasion as William's olive branch to Harry and Meghan following the Queen's death. I'm joined now by socialite and aristocrat Lady Victoria Harvey, the Star Royal author Angela Levin, and the broadcaster Sam Dowler. Now, it's been over 48 hours since the passing of Her Majesty was announced, and new details have emerged about a behind-the-scenes row concerning Harry and Meghan that managed to rock the Queen's last day on Earth. As we know, Harry was the last royal to arrive at the Queen's deathbed, and according to a source for the Sun newspaper, his delay is explained by a sensational intervention from the now King Charles, where the monarch put a stop to the Duke of Sussex travelling with his wife Meghan. Now, this is what a source told the newspaper. Charles told Harry that it wasn't right or appropriate for Meghan to be at Balmoral at such a deeply sad time. It was pointed out to him that Kate was not going and that the numbers really should be limited to the very closest family. Charles made it very, very clear Meghan would not be welcome. Now, those talks held back Harry's departure, meaning he did not accompany his brother William, and despite being the last to arrive, Harry was also the first to leave, catching an early morning flight the next day. But following these claims of yet another royal bust-up, the firm finally decided to put on a united front, just as the Queen would have wanted. Earlier this evening, Harry and Meghan joined with William and Kate, as we saw on those newspaper front pages, as they viewed the floral tributes to Queen Elizabeth II that had been left by members of the public outside Buckingham Palace. This act marks the first time the couples have appeared in public together since Commonwealth Day in March 2020. So, Angela Evan, I guess you can say, yes, they did the Queen proud today. That's certainly what she would have wanted. But given these revelations overnight, it seems like there's still serious tension.
Yes. My feeling is that they felt they couldn't trust her and that she could use what she saw, what she heard, what people said at that very, very traumatic and upsetting time and sell it for loads of money to some magazine or a programme, or actually turn it round about how difficult it was for her.
So it was almost about protecting the Queen, or the Queen's memory, by not allowing her to be there, Angela.
Well, I think it was the right thing to do, really. That if you have a very intimate family, you want just that family. She hasn't tried to satisfy herself and be one of the family. She's really always been an outsider. And I think at those extreme moments in life when you're losing someone who's so dear to you, you just want the people who understand you and know you. And if you want to really cry, you don't want to have somebody there who could then pass that on.
Lady Victoria Harvey, why this is so awkward, of course, is that Prince Harry's spokesperson had formally announced that both the Duke and the Duchess were travelling to Balmoral, so there clearly was some form of intervention. Do you think it's fair enough, Lady Victoria, that Prince Charles just wanted blood relatives there? I mean, outside of Sophie, who obviously had such a close relationship with the Queen, and we know that the Queen almost viewed Sophie as another daughter, but even Kate wasn't there, Lady Victoria.
Yeah, no, I think it was the right decision. It just would have been completely inappropriate for someone like Meghan, who has only just joined the royal family very recently and has been the reason why, you know, the family has been sort of, apart. So it would have been very reckless to have had her there. I think it was the right thing, and even Harry thinking of bringing her was completely inappropriate, right?
Sam Dowler, what did you make of this body language today? I found it very fascinating. The body language between William and Kate is very confident, and they know how to work events like this. They don't feel like they have to do everything together. Meghan was almost clutching on to Harry for dear life at points.
She always is.
I think she's a woman on the back foot at the moment, I think, Meghan, and I think, you know, sources say, you know, that Charles said that, etc. I think probably Meghan was like, I will come with you to support you, Harry, and then Kate wasn't going, etc. So I think we're reading too much into it to think that she, you know, she wanted to be, you know, by the Queen doing a selfie. Me and Granny on her deathbed. Like, I don't think she wasn't going to do that.
No, but she'd remember what she said.
She'd be going running to Oprah.
Of course, and I do think obviously.
Isn't that the point? There's been so many leaks, Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been told, and I'm sure Angela has similar information to this, but I have actually been told, and this is sad, but it's a fact, that King Charles now, but obviously Prince Charles then, and Prince William do not even want to be in private anymore with Prince Harry because they are so concerned that the information from those conversations will be leaked to US media outlets.
I'd love to be a fly on the car wall in the car as they left. Obviously, once they'd done the walk around. But
because that was a private moment. There was no one else in that car.
Yeah, exactly.
William was driving.
Exactly. And I think, as I said, Meghan knows what she has said. I do think she's, she thinks about herself a lot, but I think in this scenario, we do have to give her the benefit of the doubt a little bit to know that she was there to support her husband and not necessarily, to do anything to do with her own self. I think we have to give her that benefit just at this moment, even if not.
Angela, you want to come in?
Yes. What I've heard today is that one of the reasons Harry was so late was that she was screaming and shouting at him that he couldn't go without her. And
really?
That can't be true, surely.
But
Where is that from?
That's the sort of behaviour that she does.
No, that's the sort of behaviour that we want her to do.
No, we don't want her
Of course, we don't want her to do it, but people go, oh, I knew she would do that.
But you can see that it's only...
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
But Lady Victoria, playing devil's advocate, should we not feel some sympathy towards Meghan? Because, of course, the last time she appeared in the UK in public, she was booed. So perhaps she was concerned that if she went into the public outside Windsor Castle, there was a chance that she would be booed. Obviously, it didn't happen because she was with Kate and William, but maybe that's why she was reluctant.
Not at this moment in time, I don't think. I don't think anyone's going to... I think everyone's thinking about the Queen
and about the new king. I'm saying why she may have been reluctant.
Absolutely not like that. She doesn't think about anyone.
No,
you
I
can
think
see
she just thinks about herself.
Exactly.
And the fact that they left the Jubilee, the celebrations in the summer, early because
they weren't allowed to be there, and they weren't being given the respect that they thought. But
she apparently wanted to leave.
Apparently, we don't know that to be true.
Well, no, they absolutely were allowed to be there, Sam. And actually, after the service of remembrance at St Paul's Cathedral, they decided not to go into the minivan that had all of the other members of the royal family to a function at the Guildhall afterwards, which was paying tribute to the Queen, even though she couldn't be there. Instead, they went on their own merry way. So there are certainly very real tensions there because of the behaviour. I mean, Angela Evan, it was only earlier this week that we had that briefing saying that it was Harry and Meghan who didn't want to see any member of the royal family, including the Queen, on their visit to the UK.
Well,
that was just this week.
Prince Charles offered them to come and stay, asked them to come and stay with him, and they didn't want to. And I think that really shows it all. And there wasn't going to be any time for the Queen. They hadn't decided that they would like to see the Queen, even though when Harry did actually see her a few months ago, he said he came because he wanted to make sure that she was being properly looked after, which was a ridiculous thing to say when he's, living in California. And if he did feel like that, he could pop over. I mean, I think it's a very long flight, but royals don't seem to worry about long flights, and he could have come.
He would have been on one of his private jets again.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he could have come, but he didn't want to.
No.
And I think that also when we heard Meghan from her podcasts and the interview she gave in this magazine called The Cut, I think, it was all about me. She tries to gather customers and people who like her by being a sort of pretending she's a victim. Well, she's really not a victim at all, but she doesn't really think about other people. I don't think she understood a least bit about how the royal family worked. She didn't mind about that. It was all about what she wanted to do. And I think she plotted to leave, well before they did. and I don't think you can trust her. Actually.
Lady Victoria, is there an opportunity to turn the page here, though? Do you think...
Well, I hope so.
What, between Harry and the rest of the family?
Yeah.
I mean, like you discussed earlier, you know, he should stop this book from coming out. Obviously, that would create a massive wedge with the family. Like right now, he just needs to be concentrating on repairing everything. And just the fact that he moved to America with Meghan, you know, in the Queen's last years when obviously like her health was deteriorating, and knowing that, you know, his children are never really going to get that time with her like William's children got. And those are like moments that they'll never get back. And it was just very selfish. I think the whole move to
Well, of course.
California was
And Lady Victoria, though, more
selfish.
for them, because in William's statement today, he spoke about how special it was that his children got to have an opportunity to holiday in Balmoral with the Queen. Prince Harry was offered that opportunity.
And he declined it.
Time
and
and
I
again.
think he will, you know, listening
Regret
to
it.
that, he's gonna be taking everything in right now. But I think it's gonna get to a point where he's gonna really regret his move and losing those moments of spending time with his grandmother.
I think it's very interesting that actually children can really heal something within a family. But they haven't actually been able to meet, because when they last came over, when there was the Jubilee, it had been planned for months and months earlier that Catherine and William and the children, apart from Louis, because he was a little too small, were going to Wales for that day, that they wanted to have Lilibet's birthday party. So there hasn't been an effort to have the children there. And I think if you put children on the floor all together, and then they can make people laugh and make it so simple and think, my goodness, let them have a relationship. But they've not shown any interest in doing that whatsoever.
I think William's children and Harry's have not really had any time together. To
Exactly, they're cousins, and there's no denying that what Harry and Meghan have done is did cause the Queen anguish in the last few months of her life.
And to me, it's a bit unforgivable, to be honest.
No, it is.
But however, if and we don't know this, of course, it could well have been that one of the Queen's dying wishes that they would come together.
Yeah, no, well, I'm sure it was.
And look,
for the good of the Queen, I'm glad that they have done that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just very difficult for me to just all of a sudden forget. I know what everyone's meant to do tonight is say, oh, yay, the Fab Four are back, and like the Sun says, all for one. I'm sorry, I just can't do that, because I remember the fact that they went and gave that interview to Oprah Winfrey making claims of racism against the royal family when Prince Philip was on his deathbed.
If the Queen wants to forgive, then shouldn't we also? If the Queen wishes to forgive, then shouldn't we follow suit?
Look, of course I'll forgive, but we have to see how they act. All I'm saying is that this was a good start, but one photo opportunity, and let's be honest, this is a strategic photo opportunity. One photo opportunity isn't going to change everything.
Let's see what's in the book.
Exactly. But yesterday in the House of Commons, our politicians paid homage to Her Majesty the Queen, including especially poignant speeches from former Prime Ministers Boris Johnson and Theresa May. But it isn't just statesmen from this country who were deeply touched by Elizabeth II. Without question, she was admired the world over, demonstrated by this deeply moving tribute from former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. He met the late Queen while in power between 2015 and 2018. Watch.
She gave us a portrait of herself, the official portrait of herself and Prince Philip. And she said, with a wry smile, she said, here you are, you can put them in a cupboard, I suppose. And last night, as we were filled with such dread, because it was obvious that things would turn very bad, I took the portrait of the Queen out and set it up. And we just thought, what an amazing life. What amazing leadership.
What a lovely tribute. It certainly has been an emotional time as we adjust to a new monarch after 70 long and glorious years. Broadcasting this major moment in our national history is a responsibility we do not take lightly at GB News, and the same can be said of my colleagues across the industry. But in this time of extreme change, even the professionals are struggling to keep up with the new royal titles.
Statement from His Majesty the Queen. A statement from His Majesty the King. You can see that even those of us who have followed this for a long time can still make those mistakes. His Majesty the Queen, His Majesty the King has just issued that statement on behalf of Buckingham Palace.
The incoming monarch, well, the monarch now, Prince Charles III, what their hopes for him?
Take over the reins. She has big shoes to fill, somebody said to us earlier, didn't they?
Ingrid, this was a historic speech. It was long. We learnt a lot about how Prince Charles intends to reign. Good to know. It's not just me. We will get used to it eventually, of course. Now, look, I'd love to hear from you. I want your condolences, fond memories, experiences of the Queen and your thoughts on our new king. Dan at gbnews.uk or at gbnews on Twitter. Now, David has written to say, during the Queen's state visit to Japan in 1975, my then 6-year-old son called out, "I saw you on the telly," as she walked past a group of children in the British Embassy compound. She stopped, smiled sweetly at him and said, "Yes, I'm on the box a lot, aren't I?" Love that. Jean says, I loved the clip of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth with Paddington Bear at her 70th year celebration, where she took out her marmalade sandwich from her handbag. Pure class, rest in peace. And Matthew has to say this on Charles III. I think His Majesty the King will do incredibly well and make his mother and the country proud. His speech to the nation was truly well done. So look, keep your thoughts and feelings on this very sad occasion, both coming into us on email, dan@gbnews.uk, and on our GB News Twitter account. Plus, actually, would love for you to join the Dan Wootton Club on Twitter. I'll check in straight after the show. Just go to @Dan Wootton on Twitter and you can join the club there. Earlier today, the Accession Council met at St James's Palace to formally proclaim King Charles as the new sovereign. Here is the grieving king taking his first formal oath as monarch.
I'm deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony and prosperity of the peoples of these islands.
The procedure took on extra historical significance by being televised, granting the public access to the ceremony for the very first time. And if the pomp and pageantry wasn't enough to get us off our seats, in attendance were some of our greatest political leaders, past and present, including 6 ex-prime ministers. So here they are, ushering in the new era for the monarchy.
Bless His Majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. God save the King.
God save the King.
But like any headlined act, King Charles did keep his audience waiting, which meant for a lot of awkward mingling between long-time political friends and foes. For instance, take a look at this exchange between Boris Johnson and Gordon Brown, where it's the ex-Labour Prime Minister uncharacteristically seeming to crack the gags. Here's the Three Stooges of the Labour Party plotting maybe this socialist revolution. I have to say, Starmer looks a bit like how I feel when I watch his performance at PMQs. And for months, I've been telling you about the dangers of a Labour SNP coalition from hell, but I didn't expect Angela Rayner and Ian Blackford to be this close. Another political heavyweight in attendance was former First Minister of Northern Ireland, member of the GB News family, Arlene Foster. And I'm delighted that Arlene joins me now to tell me what it was really like inside St James's Palace this morning. I mean, Arlene, wow, that was an incredible moment of history. What was it like inside that room?
Well, it was an incredible moment, Dan, and thank you for inviting me onto your show tonight. It was an incredible moment of history, and it really struck me, actually, when we went outside to the yard where the proclamation was read out to the public. And once it was read out, I could hear the cheers coming from the mall. I could hear the cheers coming from behind in St James's. And I just thought that will be such an encouragement to the new king to hear those cheers coming forward for him. It was an incredible time, and I feel a real privilege to have been part of it, Dan.
He looked emotional again, Arlene, which is not a surprise, but it seemed, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, because you were there, I obviously only saw it on TV, but it felt like he was very aware of the historical significance of this moment.
Well, of course, everything has been building up to this for Charles. He's been the longest-serving heir in history. He knows the significance of it. He's been preparing for this. But of course, we should never forget that he's just lost his mother, his mentor, somebody who's always been there to go to when he had issues and questions, and she's gone now. And I just thought he did look incredibly sad today. I thought William also looked very solemn, and Camilla, I thought, was clearly touched at different points in the procedure as well. So I think it was a very emotional time. The fact that it was televised, and I actually agree with it being televised so everyone can see what happens. It's a hugely historic ceremony. It goes back, I think, to the 1300s. So it was wonderful to be there for it. And I think to share it with everybody at home was very, very special.
It's really important, actually, that we were privy to it, Arlene, you might say. Now, look, what was it like with all of those political friends and foe in one room? Could you cut the tension with the knife, or in a situation like that, do all of you put political differences aside?
Oh, we put political differences aside, and we're all there for the single purpose of paying homage to His Majesty the King, noting that our beloved Queen has passed, and we're now looking at the continuity of the monarchy. And whether you're a Republican and nationalist, or whether you're like me, a huge royalist like yourself, Dan, it has a very great significance, and we're all there to do a job, and that's why we were there today. So yes, I was standing beside Alex Salmond at one moment, and then the next moment I was standing beside the former Archbishop of York, John Sentamu. So that's the sort of range of people that were at the Privy Council today. A wonderful eclectic mix of people from right across the United Kingdom.
Arlene, it was interesting to me that David Cameron was standing in between Theresa May and Boris Johnson. Lots of commentary online about that. What did you make of it?
Well, I don't know whether that was on purpose or it's just the way it worked out when they walked into the room. The former Labour Prime Ministers were at one side, and then the four Conservative former Prime Ministers were together. But to me, it was quite noticeable that instead of chronologically, that David Cameron was actually in between Theresa May and Boris Johnson. I noticed it myself, so I'm not surprised that the online community noticed it as well, Dan.
Yeah, let's just say there were a few awkward stares between Boris and Theresa. Look, Arlene, you obviously backed Liz Truss for Prime Minister. The last time you were on the show, we were talking about that. And of course, we're not talking about politics at the moment because we are in this period of national mourning. But what I do want to talk to you about is the incredible way that I think Liz Truss has had to take on so much within her first, I mean, Arlene, this is hard to believe, but within her first 4 days in office. How impressive has she been?
I think she's a bit like His Majesty. She has really risen to the occasion.
Yeah.
So on Monday, she has the news that she's going to be the next Prime Minister. On Tuesday, she kisses hands with Her Majesty the Queen. On Wednesday, she has her first Prime Minister's question time. And on Thursday, Her Majesty the Queen passes. On Friday, she meets His Majesty the King. My goodness, what a week it has been for Liz Truss, our Prime Minister. I think she has handled it very, very well. I think she looks very well. She must be absolutely exhausted because there's huge pressure on the Prime Minister at any time, but dealing with the death of a much-loved monarch and someone who has been here for 70 years, it's just incredible what she's had to deal with. And, you know, I know people are watching her every move. Twitter is its usual cruel self, Dan, in relation to some of the ways in which she's been doing things. But from my point of view, I think she has played a very good game and is actually doing very, very well indeed.
I actually completely agree with you, Arlene. The Mail on Sunday tomorrow is reporting fascinating details of that historic moment on Thursday. And I really think it's worth sharing, actually, Arlene, and I'm keen to know what you think. But what's incredible is when Liz Truss went into the chamber in the House of Commons on that Thursday to deliver what we thought was going to be the moment that we were going to be talking about for days to come, the £150 billion energy bailout, we're told, Arlene, that at that point she had already been informed by Simon Case, the head of the civil service effectively, that the Queen had hours to live. So she had to go into the chamber, Arlene, pretending that everything was OK, delivering her energy bailout, knowing full well that later that day the likelihood was that she would be mourning the death of the Queen. And actually, she had already written or started to write her speech about the Queen's life before she gave that performance in the House of Commons. I mean, look, it's fascinating, isn't it, to know what must have been going on behind the scenes that we had no idea.
Exactly. But I think, Dan, what people fail to realise is that often when you're a leader, whether you're a First Minister or whether indeed Prime Minister, and of course it's exacerbated when you're a Prime Minister because you've so much more responsibility, you just have to focus on what you're doing at that particular point in time, regardless of everything else that's going on around you. You have to focus on that issue at that particular point in time and close out all the rest of the noise. So people may be saying X, Y, and Z on Twitter. People are saying things on mainstream media. There's advisors wanting you to turn your attention to other things. You have to be focused on what's in front of you. And I think that's what she's doing very well. She was doing it very well in the House of Commons, despite the fact that she knew this horrible news was probably coming her way. But my goodness, I think she has acquitted herself very well.
Just two quick political things I wanted to ask you about, Arlene, that are related to the Queen's death. The Liberal Democrats have had to cancel their conference because it clashed directly with the Queen's funeral. There's some speculation that the conference recess, where Parliament traditionally doesn't sit while the Labour Party and the Conservative Party host their annual conferences, that might be suspended because there's just so much work that's going to need to be done following the Queen's death. Do you think that would be appropriate?
I do think it would be appropriate. I think that given everything that the nation's going through at the moment, I don't think it would be particularly appropriate for parties to decamp to their party conferences and have a very jolly time when we've just had the horrific death of Her Majesty the Queen, who has been our monarch for 70 years. So I think that may well be the case. And if they do decide to go ahead, Dan, and have maybe even a shortened recess, you will see, I think, very different conferences to the ones that you would have seen happening, perhaps just 2 days. A very sombre conference will take place. It'll not be, regardless of what happens, the same sort of conferences that you would have had. And, you know, people will have been looking forward, members will have been looking forward to those party conferences because, of course, due to COVID, there hasn't really been a full-scale party conference now for a number of years, and people would have been looking forward to that. But I think the nation, party members, will understand that this is a very particular set of circumstances, and I'm not sure that the party conferences will go ahead. And if they do go ahead, they'll certainly not be the same.
And finally, Arlene, just a quick word on Boris Johnson. It must have been a difficult week for him. Of course, he had been preparing to shepherd the nation through the time after the Queen's death. And he delivered, I thought, a really impeccable tribute in the House of Commons, which presumably was the speech he would have delivered outside number 10 Downing Street if he had still been Prime Minister?
I'm not sure about that. I think it would have been slightly more sombre and slightly more different. It allowed him to be more of himself yesterday, if I can say that, because he wasn't the Prime Minister. But I think he did deliver it very well, and everybody has recognised that to be the case. I mean, it's been a difficult week for a lot of people. It's been a week of change. Penny Mordaunt today was just in as President of the Privy Council, and I thought she acquitted herself with great grace and great dignity today, and I think that is shared by many, many people. I was thinking about Boris as he stood right in front of me today, how difficult it was for him, not standing there as Prime Minister, but as an ex-Prime Minister with his former colleagues as well. So it has been a difficult week. It's been a week of change, monumental change. As you and I both know, Dan, it'll be a week that'll go down in history as quite striking. I'm not sure we'll see again two Prime Ministers and two sovereigns in the 1 week, and that sort of changeover again happening in such short time. But this is what happens. History is made, and we've just lived through history in this past week.
Arlene Foster, the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, who was, of course, there for that historic Privy Council sitting today. Thank you so much, Arlene.
Thanks.
Now, it's not just Charles who is mourning the loss of the Queen. The new Prince of Wales, William, released a moving statement paying tribute to his grandmother, calling her an extraordinary leader and saying he's incredibly grateful to have had the benefits of the Queen's wisdom and reassurance into his 5th decade. And to get the feeling from Wales, we can go now to the GB News presenter Jeff Moody, who joins me from Llandaff Cathedral in Cardiff. How's the mood there, Jeff?
Hello, Dan. I've actually moved. I was at Llandaff earlier on. I'm now outside Cardiff Castle, where the proclamation is going to take place at noon tomorrow. They've been rehearsing for it all afternoon. It kicks off at noon tomorrow. The public are invited, so if anybody wants to come along, they need to be here by 10 o'clock, and the first 2,000 people will be let in to witness a piece of history. You asked how the mood is here. I would say it's very mixed. I would say there's a lot of people here that are very, very excited, is possibly the wrong word, but very geared up about the fact that their man, Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, is now the King. They feel a personal attachment to the Prince of Wales for obvious reasons. There's a little bit of a mixed reaction from people around the concept of having another Princess of Wales, and of course we can understand that. The term Princess of Wales now is so emotionally charged, isn't it, Dan, that it's very, very hard for people of a certain age to think of anybody else as the Princess of Wales. And Princess Catherine has addressed that issue recently, and she said, you know, that she understands the historic weight that there is behind that title, and that she intends to honour the previous Princess of Wales by continuing her work, but in her own way. So there are issues with some people around that. It also has to be said that there are a significant number of people in Wales that don't agree with the concept of a Prince and Princess of Wales at all. Wales has a very different relationship with the monarchy in general than other parts of the UK does, and particularly around the title of Prince of Wales. It was bestowed on them back in the days of Edward I, and there's been a very checkered history to the role of the Prince of Wales. And a significant number of people have said to me today, I wish we'd been consulted. I wish we'd been asked at this point, this conjecture in history, whether we actually wanted to have a Prince and Princess of Wales. Now, having said that, it's worth pointing out that the politics of it, whether we should have a Prince and Princess of Wales, indeed people that's, you know, whether we should have a monarchy, is nothing to do with the people involved. And you won't hear anybody, I've certainly not heard anybody, that doesn't think the highest of King Charles, the Prince and Princess of Wales as people, and of course our Queen that we've lost this week. And there's a reason why the people in Wales have such a strong affection and respect for the late Queen. And that's to do with the 21st of October 1966. That was the day that 116 children and 28 adults were killed when a slag heap descended from the top of the hill in Aberfan and totally engulfed and destroyed a primary school, killing everybody inside. The Queen was slow to respond to that crisis. In those days, it was unheard of for a monarch to get involved with issues like accidents and things going wrong. It wasn't their job. But after about a few days, the Queen went down to Aberfan, and she was very famously pictured coming out of the house of somebody who had lost their children in this terrible, terrible tragedy, wiping a tear from her eye. And it's the first example of a monarch addressing their people directly and being there at a time of comfort. Before that, we had seen kings and queens in the past get involved with their public at times of stress. Yes, we had. But the monarch would always inspect the troops. George V, you know, in the First World War, would inspect the troops on the front line, while Queen Mary, the Queen Consort, would be visiting the hospitals. When the Queen came to Aberfan, she changed the way the majority of the Welsh feel about the monarch. And she changed the monarchy too. She created a compassionate, caring monarchy that hadn't been seen today. And certainly in Wales, Aberfan is the Queen's testimony here.
Beautifully put, Jeff Moody. Thank you so much, live in Cardiff. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's historic newspaper front pages. The Sunday Telegraph headline is "Reunited in Sorrow." The paper marks the momentous occasion of the two brothers and their wives meeting in Windsor to pay tribute to their late granny. Reunited for Granny, declares the Sunday Mirror as they cover William's olive branch to Harry and Meghan after the Queen's death. And the Sunday Times, and you know what, I actually love this. They've just said, forget all of that. Tomorrow's edition is about Queen Elizabeth II. The Independent sums it up simply, going back to the William and Harry thing, saying they come together to mourn the Queen. Joining me now, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy, esteemed political journalist John Sargent, and the broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant. And breaking tonight, in less than 12 hours' time, the Queen's coffin, which is currently lying in the ballroom at Balmoral Castle, will travel by road to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, accompanied by her daughter Princess Anne, we learned today. The Queen will then lie in rest at the palace overnight, and on Monday there will be a procession to St Giles Cathedral, where from 5 p.m. the coffin will rest to allow people to pay their respects. The following day it will be flown to RAF Northolt before going on to Buckingham Palace ahead of the Queen's state funeral, confirmed to be at Westminster Abbey on Monday the 19th of September. Now, for many, it is fitting that the Queen's final resting place was at her Balmoral estate in Scotland, the place where she holidayed throughout her life and where she felt most comfortable, really. She loved it. Significantly, in this period of mourning, even the SNP have suspended their nationalist agenda to celebrate Her Majesty the Queen. Here's how their Commons leader, Ian Blackford, played tribute yesterday.
And in what was sadly her final ever address to the Scottish Parliament, her love of Scotland and its people was clear, when she said, "It is the people that make a place, and there are few places where this is truer than it is in Scotland." The relationship between Scotland and the Queen was one of shared admiration. Indeed, whilst she was everyone's Queen, for many in Scotland, she was Elizabeth, Queen of Scots.
And at the Accession Council this morning, Nicola Sturgeon herself solidified the union of the crowns by acting as an eyewitness to the ceremony. So, John Sargent, as Ian Blackford said there, the Queen was much loved by the people of Scotland. So do you think her tragic death could bring the home nations together and provide an opportunity for unionism to flourish?
Well, and about flourishing, I mean, but what they can do is to underline the fact that these are the representatives of the United Kingdom. Of course, they've got to sign things and do things in relation to that as part of the union. And if you can emphasise the importance of the union, the strength of it, particularly when all this money has to go in emergencies, whether it's COVID or whether it's because of the cost of living, that money comes from the Treasury, comes from London. Now, this may be difficult for people in Scotland to appreciate fully, but to underline the point by having the new King and the new Prime Minister there and the Queen in her coffin, I mean, that's powerful stuff, isn't it? And I would have thought that there are very few people in Scotland who won't realise the political significance of this, as well as what they might feel and all the duty and feelings of remorse they have for the death of the Queen.
Well, indeed, because Belinda de Lucy, of course, we don't know for sure. We may never know for sure. But it's possible that the Queen wanted to die in Scotland.
Mm.
I feel that. I think the Queen's faith is incredibly strong. I think she did have a very close relationship with God, a very spiritual woman. And I just wonder whether this might have been planned in her mind. And I don't know if any of your viewers grew up with all the stories of how Queen Elizabeth found out she was Queen. She was in the treehouse in Kenya. Well, King Charles found out he was king when the Queen and him were in Scotland. And that will be forever remembered and forever the link. And there are lots of links now. And we mustn't forget that the King Charles has the blood of Scottish kings running through his veins. King James VI's blood is running through his veins. And I think if he makes a bit more of that to the Scots while he's king, that he is their king as much as ours in blood as well, you never know. I think it's united us for a very long time. And maybe that was the plan of the Queen all along.
Well, Ingrid Tarrant, I think that is very possible. I mean, we do know, don't we, after the Scottish independence referendum, David Cameron got in a lot of trouble for reporting that when he informed the Queen of the result, she was simply purring down the phone to him. This matters to the Queen. Protecting the union was something that she felt very strongly about, even though she couldn't outwardly say it.
Yes, of course, she did feel very strongly about it. And actually, the Commonwealth, she was, she was the mother, the grandmother to all. It's interesting, actually, because she was, in any case in Scotland, which she traditionally does every summer. And I don't know, really, whether she did know that she was going to be dying up there, because 2 days before, she was shaking hands. I mean, I know she looked quite frail, but who would have thought that 24 hours, 48 hours later, she would be...
Do you know what?
Died. So I don't know if it was...
I have a feeling she did,
Do you?
Yeah, look, I don't want to talk about the Queen's private health details because she didn't want that discussed. But remember, she hadn't been seen in public for 53 days. She knew that she had to gather the strength in order to see off Boris Johnson and welcome in Liz Truss. That was incredibly important to her. And I think it's so poignant, actually, that was her last duty.
Amazing. The timing was fantastic, wasn't it?
But I suspect it was more important for her to do that job with the new Prime Minister than to say, well, I'm going to die in Scotland. That's stretching it quite a bit, isn't it? If she thinks I'm going to make that effort and that's the next important thing I've got to do.
Yeah,
that's
but
rather
remember,
different,
John, previously it had been made very clear by senior courtiers that the Queen intended to return to London to see the new Prime Minister, and that very quickly changed. And for me, I have a feeling that the Queen didn't take chances, and I think this was stage managed, and I think it was a very beautiful thing, and it hopefully will help the union. I think as well it was just important that she was in Balmoral, a place where she did spend her summers and where she would usually be, rather than making that trip to London.
Was there. And I do think that very much will... the Scottish will appreciate it. I know it sounds really peculiar to say this, but they'll almost be proud of the fact that the Queen died in their country, if you like, in their land. Yeah. And also, I do think that you don't really know what you've got till it's gone. And I think the Queen was just there. We took her for granted in very many ways. And now, when the significance of her role, where she united the whole of the United Kingdom, and that it could possibly even threaten to be disintegrated, and you know, that suddenly they're going to think twice about this.
That's what and look how Nicola Sturgeon's warming up. It's almost like she's had a eureka moment and she's triggering all the Scottish nationalists on
but
Twitter.
I think the problem is you can get carried away. If you're keen on the union, to think, oh, well, this will do the trick, surely they'll see sense.
It's certainly not going to do the trick. It might be a nice moment, though. John Sargent, Belinda Lucy, Ingrid Tarrant, thank you so much. And as you might know, I was actually reporting outside Buckingham Palace when the Queen's death was announced, and the eerie silence that followed among the thousands of well-wishers will stay with me forever. And I'm certain that for the rest of our lives, each of us will remember exactly where we were when the dreaded news came through. And perhaps some of the most shocked were the passengers out at sea on the Britannia cruise ship, which had been christened by Her Majesty in 2015. I want to show you the incredible experience of the TV drag star and Britain's Got Talent finalist Lavoie, who happened to be filming a birthday message for a fan when the captain relayed the shock news that, well, changed everything.
Hello, darling Tanya, it's me, Lavoie. Now, I've heard that you are the most glamorous, fabulous person in comedy. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain speaking. I am sorry to interrupt your day, but it is with deep regret. I have to advise you that it has just been announced from Buckingham Palace that Her Majesty the Queen has died. Her Majesty attended many events on board our ships over many years, including our 150th anniversary celebrations on the Thames in 1987, and we were honoured to have her name Oriana in April 1995, and of course Britannia in March 2015. I am sure you will join P&O Cruises as we express our deep sympathy at the death of Her Majesty and extend sincere condolences to the royal family.
This is GB News at 11 o'clock, Britain's news channel. I'm Dan Wootton, as we continue to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth the Great. And at the close of a historic day in which we as a nation got to see the proclamation of a new monarch for the first time ever, questions linger about whether the royal family can maintain a united front under King Charles III. After years of acrimony, the new Prince of Wales extended an olive branch to Harry and Meghan as they met a grieving public in Windsor. But will the Sussexes put the country and the memory of Queen Elizabeth before personal vendettas? US royal commentator Kinsey Schofield will be here on that soon. And after Prince Andrew was embraced by the crowds at Balmoral, should King Charles forgive his brother and reinstate him as a working royal? A very important discussion about the shape of the post-Elizabethan monarchy next. Plus, as the date of Queen Elizabeth's funeral is confirmed and made a bank holiday by King Charles, do you agree with the nation coming to a standstill to mourn Her Majesty? I'll get the thoughts of my panel of GB News favourites and royal experts before midnight, so please do stay with us. But first, let's cross to Westminster now, where a special session of Parliament has now ended. During a rare Saturday sitting, MPs and peers have been paying tribute to the Queen, and ministers have sworn a new oath of allegiance to the King. And I'm joined now by GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood. Tom, I mean, this has been one of the more extraordinary days of parliamentary business. I just want to talk for a second about the pressures facing Liz Truss now, the new Prime Minister, who was expected to spend her first week in office attempting to push through a £150 billion energy bailout. Well, Tom, it's been announced in the last few hours instead she will now be going on a tour of the nations with the new King.
She will. Now, this wasn't a duty of hers. I was in a briefing with her official spokesman a little bit earlier today when this was announced. The Prime Minister will be accompanying the King, first to Scotland, then to Northern Ireland, and then to Wales before returning back here to Westminster to accompanying him on those official duties, really going across the United Kingdom. Now, this is something that she is voluntarily doing as Prime Minister of the whole United Kingdom, standing side by side the new Prime Minister and the new King, supporting the King in a mission that is very much being led by the palace. Number 10 are very, very clear in all of this that they are following in the palace, supporting the palace and not leading. This is a choreography that is being determined by Buckingham Palace. But yes, the Prime Minister will be taking on these duties, will be taking on symbolic duties, on top of course, her heavy in tray of all of the different crises that this refreshed government does need to face. Of course, looking back to Thursday when that enormous energy package, that price freeze was announced, that looked like it was going to be the largest thing in the Prime Minister's in tray before, in that very parliamentary session, the note was passed to those front benches that the Queen was very ill. Now, we are looking at a busy few days for the Prime Minister. Of course, she had another audience with the King earlier today. Indeed, her whole cabinet did after the Accession Council proclaimed King Charles III as King. There were meetings in Buckingham Palace following that, but of course also further tributes really given in a 10-hour sitting of the House of Commons today, following yesterday's 10-hour sitting. Now, that finished around an hour ago at 10 p.m, but it wasn't only tributes from across the House, from members of Parliament, but also, as you allude to, senior members of Parliament once again swearing an oath to the new King. Now, when members of Parliament take their seats, they do need to swear an oath to the monarch. At the time, back in December 2019, all sitting members of Parliament swore an oath to Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors. It's not necessary that they take a new oath to the new King, but it is, I suppose, something that many want to do, to refresh that oath, to really put their trust in this new King and put that on record. Some senior MPs had the chance to do that today. The whole House will have the chance to do that in the coming days. But yes, not normal parliamentary business for the next week or so, more than that as well, right up until beyond the funeral of Elizabeth II. This coming week will not be normal parliamentary business, but I did get it confirmed from the Prime Minister's official spokesman.
Sorry, you finished, Tom.
But I did get it confirmed from the Prime Minister's official spokesman that Number 10 does expect a fiscal statement this month. Now, how they're going to fit that in when Parliament isn't expected at this point to be sitting is a little bit of a mystery, but I suppose more things do need to be decided as the days go on.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just trying to clarify, Tom. So Parliament doesn't sit at all now until presumably the day after the state funeral?
Well, this is the tricky situation because there is, for example, on Monday, a joint sitting of both houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, for a proclamation of the King. Now, that's not in the chamber of the House of Commons or the House of Lords, that's in Westminster Hall, and it's similar official duties like that that will take place rather than the normal sitting in the normal business of legislation. And, of course, it's due that conference recess starts this Thursday. That was before all of this sad situation of the late Queen passing took effect. So there is now a lot of discussion, a lot of rumour, frankly, that conference recess may not now go ahead. The Liberal Democrat conference, which was due to start this coming weekend, this coming Saturday, is now not going ahead. Of course, that clashes with the period of official mourning. It clashed indeed with the now known date of the funeral, the 19th of September. But whether or not the Labour Party conference the following weekend or the Conservative Party conference the weekend after that go ahead, or if this conference recess is perhaps suspended and a sort of hybrid conference goes ahead whilst Parliament sits, that could be a solution. It's something that a government minister suggested to me a little bit earlier today could take place. Perhaps what had been planned might be rolled back. Perhaps there will be extra sitting days that hadn't been planned hitherto. But frankly, so far, these decisions have not been made.
Tom Harwood, absolutely fascinating. So much for the new administration to deal with. Our political correspondent live from Westminster, really appreciated. And we're going to have more of tomorrow's historic newspaper front pages in just a moment. First, though, the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. Buckingham Palace has confirmed the state funeral of the Queen will be held at Westminster Abbey on Monday, the 19th of September at 11 a.m. Her Majesty's coffin will be driven from her Balmoral estate to Edinburgh tomorrow, where she will lie in state. The coffin will then be flown to London, where members of the public will have 4 days to pay their respects at Westminster Hall. Following the state funeral, which the King has ordered to be a bank holiday, the Queen will be taken to St George's Chapel in Windsor to be buried. This morning, King Charles III was formally proclaimed the nation's new monarch, where he called his mother's reign unequalled.
God save the King.
God save the King. Ahead of the pomp and pageantry at St James's Palace, he made a personal declaration and oath at the historic Accession Council meeting. King Charles spoke of the duties that lay ahead of him and vowed to follow the Queen's inspiring example.
I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set.
The new Prince and Princess of Wales were joined by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to greet well-wishers at Windsor Castle. The four royals spent time speaking to the crowd and looking at flowers laid in memory. In a statement released by Kensington Palace, Prince William said it will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real. In Balmoral, members of the royal family have thanked the public for coming to pay their respects. 3 of the Queen's 4 children, the Princess Royal, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex, returned from a prayer service to read the tributes left by well-wishers. King Charles III has met with Prime Minister Liz Truss and her cabinet, as well as opposition party leaders. The King also hosted members of the clergy, including Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Downing Street says Miss Truss will join King Charles on a tour of Britain's 4 nations to lead the national mourning from Monday. MPs have taken an oath of allegiance to the new monarch.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God.
Parliament met for a rare Saturday sitting to allow MPs to pay tribute to the late Queen and to reflect on the life of Britain's longest reigning monarch. Former Prime Minister David Cameron has paid tribute to the late Queen. He was one of many past leaders present at the Accession Council ceremony where King Charles was formally proclaimed monarch. Mr Cameron was the 12th Prime Minister to be in office during the Queen's 70-year reign. He says it's been a privilege to be British in the great Elizabethan age.
We've lost the world's greatest public servant. We've lost the world's greatest diplomat. We're still going to be finding out just what we had and just what we lost. I think for many weeks, months and years to come, it's been an extraordinary privilege to be British in this great Elizabethan age.
This is GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton.
Welcome back. We're continuing our live coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the new reign of King Charles III until midnight. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Let's take a look at how more of tomorrow's newspapers are going to be covering this time of tumult for the royals. The Sunday People writes Peace for Gran. Like many other papers, they have led with the news of William and Harry reuniting in public for the first time in 2 years to mourn our beloved Queen. The Sunday Telegraph headline, Reunited in Sorrow. The paper marks the momentous occasion of the two brothers and their wives getting together. Reunited for Granny, declares the Sunday Mirror. The Sunday Times, however, they've gone for a completely different path, simply dedicating their entire front page to a stunning image of the young Queen Elizabeth. The Independent has gone with those pictures of Harry, Meghan, William and Kate as well. The Observer, however, going with the Accession Council and describing Prince Charles III as assuming, quote, heavy duties of sovereignty. The Sun on Sunday's headline, All for One. I like that. Very good headline. Best of the night, in reference to the surprise reunion of feuding Princes William and Harry at Windsor earlier today. Together for Granny, that's what the Sunday Express have gone with. And the Daily Star say that they are all coming together in grief for the love of their granny. My panel back now. The esteemed political journalist John Sargent, the socialist and aristocrat Lady Victoria Harvey, and the royal author Angela Levin. Now, several members of the royal family, not just Harry and Meghan, were seen for the first time since the Queen's death today, as they took time to admire the countless tributes left for their mother or grandmother. Fascinatingly, Prince Andrew, his daughters, a tearful Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice, were pictured out Balmoral alongside Prince Edward and his wife Sophie Wessex and Princess Anne. That was following a prayer service held at nearby Crathy Kirk. Led by the Duke of York and Earl of Wessex, the royals spent around 10 minutes intensely reading tributes and talking to well-wishers. Andrew delivered this stoic message to some of the crowd gathered outside the castle gates.
We've been allowed one day, and now we start the process of handing her on. It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Lots of love.
Now, while Prince Andrew's place in the family as they grieve the Queen is clear, his role as a working royal still remains shrouded in doubt. The disgraced Duke has been exiled from the working monarchy since his Newsnight interview about his questionable relationship with the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And he was further disgraced in February when he paid out millions to settle the civil sexual assault case brought against him by Epstein, accused of Virginia Giuffre. So our new king has a decision to make about whether to forgive Andrew's past and allow the Duke of York to return to his public duties. Now, Prince William reportedly wants him permanently banished. But should his grandmother's death herald in a new era of unity and reconciliation? Is it time for all to be forgiven? And Lady Victoria, it's obviously very opportune that you are on this panel because you have been one of the biggest public defenders of Prince Andrew, someone obviously who you know very well. I presume you were actually very heartened by those scenes today because the public were very positive towards Prince Andrew in his moment of grief.
Yeah, no, I think, like, as you said, like, grief brings people together. And, you know, when you saw them in the car with Prince William driving, arriving at Balmoral the other day, I think that was like a real sign.
Because Prince William was on the plane with Andrew as well.
Exactly, and it just shows that, you know, blood is thicker than water, and it doesn't matter at that point when you're grieving together, like, nothing else matters. And it's been a really good opportunity for them all to come together and just put anything else aside and just be a family again. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm sure the Queen would want them to stick together.
Well, the Queen would have wanted, if she had her way, she would have wanted Andrew to be working again, but she followed the advice. from her courtiers. And obviously Prince
Right.
Charles does, oh, sorry, King Charles, goodness me, I keep
Right.
doing it. King Charles does have a decision to make now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a hard road
I think it
back
might be
for Andrew.
gradual. You know, I don't think it might be like an immediate thing, but
But you think he should be given the chance to return to royal duties?
Yeah, I do. And, you know, just the past should be just kind of left alone now and just move on. And this is, you know, a new time with his brother as the king. And they just like with William and Harry, you know, those two to become united as well. Like, this is what the Queen would have wanted. She would not want her family fighting, and they know that. Of course they know that. So, you know, hopefully that they can respect her wishes and just be a family again.
John Sargent, it was quite telling, though, wasn't it, in the King's speech last night? There was no mention of any of his siblings, and some folk believe that's because it would have been awkward for him to mention Anne and Edward and the role that they might play and not mention Prince Andrew. Do you think, John, that Victoria is right, that Prince Andrew should be given a second shot at royal duties?
No, I don't think it would be wise. I think the problem with Prince Andrew, the problem about Meghan and Harry are these distractions all the time. People find all this very exciting. We've got the possibility of Harry's memoirs coming out in the autumn. From the royal family's point of view, yes, come together as a family, make quite clear that, of course, you can't destroy relatives and send them off into exile. When it comes to a simple point about should he take up royal duties, when the political movement at the moment is to try and re-establish trust in government. That's what people are going on and on about. And Liz Truss saying, you can trust me, and all this business. To then have the possibility of somehow the royal family going back into torment because someone digs up another story about Prince Andrew. The danger always with these stories is not so much the individual story, it's when it becomes cumulative. And then you say, Prince Andrew, and you've already got the line, has done it again. Even if it's quite a small thing that's gone wrong for him, he's left with this, all this baggage then comes out again.
Right,
and that's what makes it
like
so
his
dangerous.
brother just needs to stand up for him more at the
you
end
could
of
spend
the
all
day.
your time standing up for him, and you might still find there's one thing that's gone wrong, or he's not paid this, or the bill has come in. You think, oh no, why didn't you just let sleeping dogs lie, keep him out of the public eye in terms of public duties?
Well, Angela, who are you with on this, Lady Victoria Harvey or John Sargent?
John, totally. I think Andrew has had it. I think that King Charles, just before he was king, felt that it was absolutely vital that he didn't be a working person within the royal family. And I think that he's absolutely right. And the public would be appalled that somebody who has these allegations around him, who pays millions to try and stop them, is working as a member of the royal family. I think it would really lower our feeling about the royal family, and I think it's absolutely not going to happen.
So
Charles and
Victoria, you want to come back in?
No, I was just going to ask Angela, so do you think that he should have then gone to court and it had been a huge international thing, him going to America where it's very corrupt?
Well, he shouldn't have been friends with
but
the person
But
who
that
he
was the Queen's wish, though. She didn't want him to be doing that.
No,
so
but,
how is he to blame?
Well, because he
wasn't allowed to defend himself, though.
He was a favourite of hers, but what he's been accused of and his attitude towards money is absolutely
But
shocking.
you know that the amount was way, way lower than what they tried to make out as well.
Yeah, well, then in the end, he renegotiated and it was $3 million. That's still pretty heavy, I think.
It's not that much. Her lawyers would have taken
no, but it's
more than
actually
half
the
of that.
accusation. I think when underage girls are involved in an accusation, even if nothing has been proved, he
Nothing is
was
proven.
friendly with the man who has been accused of lots of terrible, terrible things.
Well, he was convicted.
No,
that's
yeah,
the
of
difference,
course,
isn't it?
but- He was
But I
convicted.
guess, Victoria, the point that you're making
I'm
is
trying
that
to make
Andrew
that
wasn't
he
able
wasn't
to clear
allowed
his
to-
name because it would have
It was his
coincided with
mother's
the Diamond
wishes.
Jubilee.
It was his mother's wishes, and that's why she stood behind him, because clearly she knows that he is innocent, and so but he couldn't defend himself.
Yeah, but his mother's wish was also that the royal family carry on. She's been throughout her life wanting to know that she had an heir. So she had Charles, she had William, and she had little George, and that made her extremely happy. She felt very content that the monarchy was in safe hands. Now, I think that's more important thing to follow than Andrew, who has a really very poor reputation.
And look at what he did in that interview with Emily Maitlis. I mean, he was given
Emily Maitlis' behaviour was
to
disgusting.
explain himself.
What
he just dug a great hole for himself and the family.
I mean,
Victoria,
Emily's
Can you just elaborate on that?
No, I just think someone like Emily's behaviour. I mean, look, these women that are just like making all this money by like trying to sell these stories, are making a play about it now. Like, how can you make a play about it? It's the most
but that's secondary.
Insane thing.
The actual first thing.
But Emily Maitlis, her behaviour, I just think is just
because you think she's tried to cash in on the interview.
Yeah, but she obviously went in there with an agenda. She went in there knowing this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stitch him up.
But he had an agenda too. He had
an
an agenda saying,
agenda.
"I'm completely innocent. It's all.
Well, he
didn't
really
know this
wanted
woman."
to do it. Beatrice
clearly
tried to
do it. He's grown up,
but he's clearly innocent for doing that.
I mean, Victoria, he should never have
him.
sat down with Emily Maitlis, should he? It was a silly thing
No.
to do. Because I think...
But, you know, the BBC, you know, this is...
But they can't be trusted.
The Queen...
The BBC can't be trusted. Sorry, John, I know you used to work there, but no one should...
Let's not get into the BBC can't be trusted. I think this is getting...
No, it's not the BBC.
Getting out of hand.
She left because, obviously, the BBC were not happy with her, right?
There's no point going to the past about her leaving the BBC and taking up a job elsewhere.
I also want to ask about Prince Edward, if I can, Angela, because remember it was the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen's wishes, the former Duke of Edinburgh, of course, the former Queen, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, for Prince Edward to take the title of the Duke of Edinburgh. Now, that has also now been cast into some doubt with the suggestion that Charles doesn't want that to happen. What are you hearing?
No, I heard today that that's what Charles does want to happen, that they will become Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. One reason is they've worked incredibly hard.
Well, indeed. I think, I think Edward and Sophie deserve that, John Sargent.
And Sophie's been wonderful.
And also,
I agree with
we
that.
need some working royals too, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have Andrew working. We don't have Harry and Meghan working.
No, but Edward and they certainly they work very hard. I have to admit, I made a speech for them for the Duke of Edinburgh Awards and gave out awards and things, and they were terrific.
And he's taken on that
Queen
work.
adored Sophie.
Yeah, they've really stepped up.
Queen adored Sophie. She felt that she was like a second daughter to her. If you saw pictures of Sophie today, she looked absolutely heartbroken.
Oh, she does. She looks despondent. And that's the thing. I haven't liked this talk, Lady Victoria, of Edward and Sophie's role perhaps being downgraded, because I know King Charles wants to have a slimline monarchy, but actually he does need some folk who are actually going to go out and do the hard work.
Because there's so many. I mean, there's, you know, every day, right? They have to be visiting all they need that amount of people. They can't slim it down. I don't think that.
But also, they don't make a fuss. I remember there's one thing that Her Majesty said about Sophie that she liked very much. She said, "What I do really like about her, she comes in, you don't know she's there." And I think that's really quite funny, but actually she doesn't make a fuss, she doesn't scream, she doesn't get into trouble.
Well, look, I'm glad that we're at least all in agreement that Prince Edward should become the Duke of Edinburgh. That's good. We're in agreement on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, backlash against the Premier League and English Football League's decision to postpone all matches continued today as angry fans fume at being denied the chance to pay their respects to their late great Queen at a game. And actually, what was really interesting to me today, cricket fans demonstrated just how powerful a pre-match tribute could be as they gave a hair-raising rendition of God Save the King before England's match against South Africa. Watch.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King, God save the King, send him victorious.
I actually think football bosses are probably kicking themselves after witnessing scenes like that up and down the country today. Even the wokest man in Britain, Gary Lineker, realises it's wrong. He's tweeted, given the wonderful and moving scenes at the Oval, it feels a real shame that football is not taking place this weekend, therefore missing the opportunity to pay its respects. Look, I'm not sure I'll ever say these words again, but I have to agree with Gary Lineker. And let's move swiftly along. John Sargent, Lady Victoria Harvey, Angela Levin, thank you so much. Of course, thank you to you. You're sending your emails too. And a lot has been made of William and Harry's appearance together outside Windsor Castle. Mike gives his account of the reunion, saying the two pairs greeted the public on opposite sides of the road to start, then joined each other on the same side near the end. By far, the public obviously liked Kate and William the most, though they weren't cold towards Harry and Meghan. Carol agreed and said it was a magnanimous thing William did, extending the olive branch to Harry and giving away back. I did not catch all of the walkabout today, but what I did see was two couples walking separately from each other. I didn't see much reconciliation. Whilst David says the only reason they are turning up now is because they think their children could become prince or princesses. Now everyone has moved up one in the rank. Watch out. Please do send us your thoughts and feelings on this occasion, both on email to dan@gbnews.uk and on our GB News Twitter account. Of course, I'm going to be back tomorrow night for a special show between 9 p.m. and midnight as well. The Prince and Princess of Wales were reunited with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex outside Windsor Castle. As I was just mentioning, this was their first public appearance since the Queen's death. After weeks and months of acrimony, all four solemnly admired the many tokens of respect left by the public, and the reunion ended speculation that Meghan actually was going to head back to the States to be with her two children, Archie and Lilibet, named after our late Queen. She also moved quickly to quell accusations of disrespect by cancelling a series of upcoming TV appearances in New York and a visit to the UN General Assembly. Upcoming episodes of her Archetypes podcast will also be delayed in light of the death of her husband's grandmother. I'm joined live now from Hollywood by our royal commentator, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, this was an absolutely necessary thing for Meghan to do, wasn't it? It was unfathomable that during the official mourning period she could still be punting out her podcast and releasing new episodes.
Especially when we hear bits and pieces about, a little bitterness between her and the palace still, throughout some of the comments she was making to her celebrity guests. And then, little hints that the celebrities were making. Mindy Kaling, I don't know if you noticed when she said, oh, you probably can't say that. So even the celebrities were making some disparaging comments. I don't think that they're just going to postpone these upcoming episodes. I think that they're probably in crisis mode with a magnifying glass, combing through each and every episode, ripping out anything that could be potentially negative towards the monarchy, because Spotify knows that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a never before has this happened. Historically, they cannot criticize the Queen.
Kinsey, of course, the big news of the day, that reunion between the four of them, previously the Fab Four, not the Fab Four anymore. I mean, behind the scenes, they're not talking, they can't stand each other. But how important was this for the monarchy, for them to be seen together in public?
It was incredibly important. We had to do that. But Dan, I have to tell you that watching this today, and I don't know if you agree or not, I'm curious to know, it felt horribly like watching William and Harry walking behind their mother's casket. It felt like two men that were sacrificing their sanity and their comfort for the crown. It felt uncomfortable to watch. And I, how many times does William have to be the bigger person? I love Prince William. He's going to make an amazing king. You're exactly right. This had to happen. And it was comforting to see them together like this. But I felt bad for them again, too, because it was haunting, as if we were seeing them walking behind their mother's casket all over again.
Yeah, I know. And actually, sometimes, Kinsey, isn't there something to be said with doing what you want to do, doing what feels right, not doing what there's an expectation on you to do? And I do wonder if there was the royal courtiers saying, look, there's been a lot of discord in the press about the fact that there was this row over whether Harry was going to bring Meghan to Balmoral, over the fact that he didn't share the RAF jet and he took his own private jet to get to Balmoral. I wonder if that discord and discontent actually sparked the courtiers to think, look, actually, we need to see all four of you together. So I do agree with that on the one hand. On the other hand, Kinsey, I think at least what's happened now is that last night, Prince Charles offered an olive branch to Harry and Meghan. Today, Prince William offered an olive branch because we know it was him who invited the couple to join him and Kate at Windsor. And I feel like now the ball is in Harry and Meghan's court. And if they continue to act dishonourably, they can't turn around and say, oh, but we've been treated so badly by the royal family, because you haven't. You've been treated impeccably by the royal family this week.
I completely agree. But Meghan might consider this her olive branch. Meghan might consider postponing the podcast. That might be their olive branch. They might consider themselves even now. But you made a really good point. I did see visually what I saw when I watched them. I also saw them saying, stop talking about the soap opera, stop talking about the family drama and focus on the Queen. That's the silent message that I got with this. And coming from the US, I can tell you every morning show this morning was talking about Meghan not being at Balmoral. Did Prince Charles not want her there? So I don't know if that was the morning show stance over there, but those were the headlines this morning. And they've got to change the narrative, because ultimately the Queen gave us 96 years of her life, selfless, just completely selfless, this woman, and we really should be focusing on her legacy. So good for these boys. I'm praying for them. God bless them. And it was an incredible sight to see, but I ache for them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to be difficult. It's not going to be difficult to see, Kinsey, that there is still going to be continued speculation. Lots of folk talking about the body language today and how uncomfortable it was between the two couples. Meghan was continuing to cling on to Harry for dear life. There's some footage that I've seen of mourners who seem to purposefully shun Meghan. So this isn't an easy situation, Kinsey, because we can't just forget everything that's gone on for the past 2 years, can we? Or do we have to? I mean, you tell me, what should we do with these two?
I heard I heard somebody say from the UK last night, if Prince Charles can forgive them, so can I. And I thought, wow, I wish I could be that big of a person. But then today, seeing Prince William, I thought, I have got to be that big of a person, because if Prince William can do it, anybody can. Prince William has protected his brother throughout his life. I'm sure you're familiar. He protected his brother throughout the marriage of their mother and father, did not want him to know what was going on in all the turmoil. He protected them as they were teenagers, getting into naughty teenager trouble. These guys were best friends. And I know that they hurt. I know that they miss each other. And I know that William was especially hurt by some of the behavior of his brother and his wife over the last 2 years plus. And so for William to be the leader that calls and says, let's do this together. Let's be brothers. Let's be a unit for not only our father, but for our grandmother. I mean, that is one hell of a man.
Well, I think you're completely right, Kinsey, to point that out, actually. And in my digest at the top of the show, which I have now posted on my Twitter account, by the way, in case you missed it earlier, I said this was William's day, actually. This was the day of the new Prince of Wales. Yesterday was all about King Charles III and him setting out his stall. Today was about William. And not just because of the way he was able to reunite the Cambridges and the Cornwalls and the Sussexes, but because of his statement, Kinsey, which I was so moved by, and I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you. He said, she was by my side at my happiest moments. This is speaking of the Queen. She was by my side at my happiest moments, and she was by my side during the saddest days of my life. I knew this day would come, but it will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real. I thank her for the kindness she showered my family and me, and I thank her on behalf of my generation for providing an example of service and dignity in public life that was from a different age, but always relevant to us. I was so moved by that, Kinsey.
I mean, I'm crying. So, yeah, I mean, this man has been through so much. This family has been through so much. And I know we focus on the negative a lot, but they always come out on top. They always come out on the other side. And I think that that's really the way we should push our energy, that this is going to be the King Charles Regency, and it is going to be amazing. William is going to support him, and William is going to be an amazing leader. But these are devastating, sad times, but I think that there are really good times ahead, and I think that there's a lot to look forward to.
I know. It was so... The first time I heard the statement, actually, Kinsey, I felt very emotional too, actually. And I think, to me, it was Prince William really transitioning into the Prince of Wales.
That's amazing. I just got goosebumps. Absolutely. We're seeing how strong they are right now. And I know that they're hurting, but they are making sacrifices for you, I mean, not necessarily for me. They're not my monarchy, even though I've adopted them. But they're making sacrifices for the people. And I think that their ultimate goal is to represent the Commonwealth and the country. They want to make you proud. And I think that the leadership is amazing here. I think that this is a good sign of what's to come.
No, I completely agree, actually. Kinsey, I wanted to move on to a couple of other entertainment stories related to this. Obviously, the UK is in an official mourning period, which means that BBC and national broadcasters aren't meant to air comedies. But it's also looking incredibly difficult for the BBC because the most popular TV series in the UK, Strictly Come Dancing, was actually meant to launch before the Queen's funeral on September the 17th. It now seems almost inevitable that that will have to be delayed.
Oh, yes. I don't think that, I don't think that that would be even remotely appropriate. I think give it a couple of days, perhaps, but I don't think that that would even be... and was Strictly Come Dancing the show Meghan wanted to be on? Is that what Tom Bauer said? I don't remember. I think
yes,
that
that's
was.
the
That's
rumour.
The show. I think that that would be appropriate to hold out on that. I don't know. I just think that this should be a time of reflection, and we were separated for how many years? This is a great time for people to get together, not only remember the Queen, but just use this as an excuse to sit around each other's living rooms and spend time with one another.
So you think it's right, Kinsey, you think it's right that certain entertainment events should be on hold during the mourning period?
This is, like I said, this is a historic event. When is this going to happen again? I do think that I don't have a problem with it. Are we fighting here? Is this Dan against Kinsey?
No, no, not necessarily, actually. I think it's very difficult. So, for example, I don't believe that the Premier League football matches should have been cancelled, because I think one of the most beautiful things that's happening across the UK at the moment, and I can sense it, I was at Buckingham Palace earlier today, every time there's a massive group of Brits together at the moment, we feel that shared energy of grief and support for the Queen. And I think by cancelling the Premier League matches, you actually took the opportunity away for people to celebrate that. I do appreciate that the launch of a show like Strictly Come Dancing on the eve of the Queen's funeral probably would feel quite tasteless. So I think, to be honest, no, we're not disagreeing. It's on a case-by-case basis.
I think that that's a brilliant point. Yeah, the day before, no, but I do love the idea of getting together on sporting events. And it's like I said, the idea of being with one another right now, reflecting, I encourage that completely.
And we will reflect with you again tomorrow night. Our US royal commentator, Kinsey Schofield. Thank you so much, as ever, Kinsey. Let's take a look at how tomorrow's newspaper front pages are covering the King's ascension and Prince William's emotional tribute to his grandmother, the Queen. The Sunday People writes Peace for Gran. Like many other papers, they've led with the news of William and Harry uniting today to mourn their beloved Queen. The Sunday Telegraph headline is Reunited in Sorrow. The paper marks the momentous occasion of the two brothers and their wives meeting in Windsor to pay tribute to their late granny. Reunited for Granny, declares the Sunday Mirror. Of course, this was the first time the two couples have been seen together in public since March 2020. The Independent sums up the former Fab Four reunion, saying William and Harry come together to mourn the Queen. The Sun on Sunday's headline, definitely the best of the night, all for one. Together for Granny is the Sunday Express headline with that now famous picture. That's certainly going to be one for the history books. The Daily Star goes with the quote, in grief for the love of their granny, under the banner headline, Reunited. The Observer, though, they have obviously gone with the more serious and formal earlier start to the day, which describes Charles III as assuming, quote, heavy duties of sovereignty in its coverage of his official proclamation as king. And the Sunday Times has dedicated this weekend's edition, and, you know, this is going to be one of those newspapers that you want to buy to keep. Queen Elizabeth II. My panel back with me now, the socialite and aristocrat Lady Victoria Harvey, the broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, and the former MEP and political campaigner Belinda de Lucy. Now, breaking tonight, the funeral of our greatest and longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, will now officially take place at 11 a.m. on Monday, the 19th of September at Westminster Abbey. That's been confirmed by Buckingham Palace. Ahead of the funeral, the Queen will lie in state at Westminster Hall for 4 days to allow the public to pay their respects. The late monarch was consulted on all the plans before her death. Earlier today, King Charles approved an order that the day of the funeral will be a bank holiday, and some have called for everything, including all non-essential retail, to be closed as a mark of respect. And in the past few hours, the Liberal Democrats have announced that their autumn conference has been cancelled following the Queen's passing. Nick DaCosta, who chairs the party's Federal Conference Committee, said the Lib Dems want and need to show our respect to the Queen and the period of national mourning. So in their case, the conference in Brighton was due to begin on September the 17th and run until September the 20th. That's the day after the Queen's funeral, so you can see why that would have been inappropriate. There is also uncertainty now over whether Labour and Conservative conference, due to begin on the 25th of September and the 2nd of October respectively, will go ahead. Both take place outside of the period of national mourning, although Labour's conference will clash with the longer period of royal mourning. A government source told The Times there is, quote, a lot of pressure to scrap the events. So is it important we return to politics as usual given the stark challenges facing the country? And should the entire country be forced to shut down on the day of the Queen's funeral? Look, Belinda de Lucy, these might be difficult subjects to discuss, but I think we have to, don't we? Because it isn't business as usual because of the Queen's death, but it's also not business as usual in the country at the moment because of the various crises that we're dealing with.
Well, I think, you know, the Queen gave us 70 years. I think us giving her 1 day just to pay our respects and close down shops and shut offices up so everyone comes out on the street, whether you're a great monarchist or not, just to pay respects for that service. However, I would say that I'd keep all the pubs open because, because they are a sanctuary for many who can't walk the streets, for many who are sitting on their own but want to be with
Ingrid Tarrant, do you agree?
Oh, I think this is a really difficult one, actually, because in light of the fact that the retailers have suffered so greatly with the lockdown and COVID, you know, I'm just thinking...
It's just 1 day.
I know it's just 1 day, but there's so much that was like too many days before. I just wonder if the direction really should come from Parliament, from even King Charles, and then people make up their own minds how they want to deal with it, or if they just do half a day, just the morning of that time, and then do the afternoon. I think they've suffered so much. I feel really sorry for them. It's just another For half a day. They could close for half a day, perhaps. I don't know.
I definitely
It's a difficult one.
I definitely think everything should be shut down. You know, it's the most important day that we've ever gone through right now, I think, and people need to give us some respect. This is a massive day in history. So yeah, absolutely.
It's such a
pubs, like you said,
really
keep those open.
Yeah. Pubs are really struggling.
What about, for example,
Pubs are struggling,
pubs
so
and
keep
restaurants?
those open.
Because we want
Keep
people to
those
be able to
open,
get together
let people-
to mourn the Queen.
What did you say, Dan? Sorry,
Yeah,
we were
totally
talking
lost that. We're right into it, supporting our pubs.
How very dare us.
I was just saying, Ingrid
Yeah.
Tarrant, for example, it's really important that pubs and restaurants, I believe, are
Yeah,
allowed to open.
definitely.
That's going to be
For sure.
one of the places that we can
People
all
will come
gather
together.
Yeah.
It's very important. They lost
And
billions.
also they
during
can all be
COVID.
watching it, you know, from the
Yes.
pubs, celebrating together.
And the
just
elderly
in
who can't walk or go out onto the streets and, you know, be,
Exactly.
especially the lonely, this is a time we all come
Yeah.
together. We don't know when the next day we will have that the streets will be filled with
Right.
people sharing something in common.
yeah.
And also, a lot of the time, these non-essential retailers do provide an essential service, or well, not an essential service, a helpful service on big days, Ingrid, because, of course, we need to get our supplies if we're hosting a gathering in order to watch the funeral together. I just think it's... I don't think this is a black and white one.
No, it's not at all. It's a really difficult one, which is why I would rather hope that there's some sort of like directive and guidance where they don't feel
But you're
guilty.
making it sound like it's going to be like a week. It's just for one
It's
day.
one day. I know,
I
but
mean,
it's
like, you know what I mean? This is just like a lot of bank holidays. Like
Yeah,
things
and
are
they've
not
had
open.
the whole week leading up to it where, you know, the streets are packed.
I mean, if things
the
are
shops and
closed
things
on
are doing
Christmas
well.
Day
it's just
or New
24
Year's
hours.
Day, like,
Yeah.
definitely, like.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, honestly,
the Queen.
I know. I so respect the Queen and would so respect that as well. I'm just looking at it only because of I'm putting it in the COVID
And it also makes
context,
the
and
day-
I feel so sorry. Genuinely sorry for these
COVID
people
is a
that have
completely
suffered.
different thing.
No, I'm looking at their
Completely
revenue. They've suffered so much from loss of revenue, and their bills are shooting
COVID.
sky high. You know, these businesses are at the point
We're
of
saying
collapse.
one day.
I know.
So do you think of Christmas Day and bank holidays now they should all be open? I mean, is that
No, because that's traditional. It's traditional.
But we did already have an extra bank holiday
It just
earlier this
makes
year
the
for
day way
Queen's
more
Jubilee.
special if people have to do that shop and have to get
I
organised
know.
for the day, that they can concentrate and watch it on TV or be near there and actually focus on it instead of like someone going out to a shop.
But
you
what
know?
about the people that don't care about the monarchy at all? They should respect. They're in this country, and they should respect.
Well, they should
our,
leave the country and
laws.
not live in England.
Yeah, you're right.
You know.
All Republicans
They should
booted
go
out
somewhere
since
else.
Victoria Harvey.
Yeah, like
They can
leave
run the
England.
pubs for us.
Don't come to our country and complain. Just leave. Find another country.
Belinda and Lucy, what about the political impact of the Queen's death? Because, again, I'm very torn on this one, I have to admit, because the political party conferences serve a purpose, and part of that purpose is about the democratic nature of our party political system, which has been stopped in its tracks the last couple of years because of ridiculous COVID restrictions, which meant that the party conferences couldn't take place. At the same time, Belinda, I'm acutely aware that we need Parliament operating because there are so many important bills to pass. And, of course, it would be very difficult to justify another 3-week parliamentary recess after the summer and after this unexpected one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the Queen's work ethic, how hard she was working, just 48 hours before she died, and she can't have been well then, but still she was on her feet doing her job. So to say that politicians, you know, even after the period of mourning can skive off their party conferences when actually we need them together, brainstorming, working hard, getting off their derrieres and putting the time in.
Belinda, the issue with that, though, is that's fine, but usually Parliament goes into recess to accommodate the conferences. Do you see what I'm saying? So, so I'm more than happy for the party conferences to take place, but surely Parliament can't go into another recess.
I think these are very special circumstances, and I think Parliament needs to be in action because there is still a national emergency and people are very frightened about the winter, and we want to feel like we're being governed in a time of crisis.
Exactly. We've had 2 major changes. We've had the death of the Queen and a King, and we've got a new PM. And really,
Yeah,
and they
exactly,
actually
all at the
all
same
work
time.
together,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
And
wild.
Parliament and the royal family, they work together as one. It's terribly
like
important.
you said, the Queen was working up until 48 hours before she passed.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I
afraid
think
they
we
don't
have
get
to
that.
learn from her, and probably
The
any
show
normal
must
person.
go on.
Any normal person would have been in bed for those last few months.
Absolutely.
But she just carried on.
I mean, that was one of the most extraordinary things for me over the past week. The fact that the Queen, who hadn't been seen in public for 53 days, she knew she had to say farewell to Boris Johnson. She knew that our Constitution demands that she sees in person the new Prime Minister to grant them the right to be Prime Minister. But what I loved is that there was no sign to us that she was suffering at all. Her hair was immaculate. Her clothes were immaculate. She was on her feet. The camera was still in the room snapping away. My goodness, there is so much.
I think that's
to
why
learn
it was
from
such
that,
a
isn't there?
shock. Yeah, it was so
But you
sudden.
remember, I mean, it's the same stoicism that when they were going down the Thames and they stood there for hours in the cold
Prince
and the
Philip,
rain.
suffering from a serious illness at that point, was very physically uncomfortable.
Unbelievable.
And I think, don't you think that is the biggest loss? And Prince William referred to this in his statement earlier. It's the loss of our greatest generation. I mean, I think of my own grandparents who fought in World War II, and I think living through World War II, fighting in World War II, it gave that generation a completely different perspective on life. And it's something that I've
we
learned
haven't had
so
to go
much.
through that.
And it makes me so sad that we're losing that.
What a privilege, though, for our generation, or mine, certainly, to grow up in the presence and the company of these great heroes. So hopefully we can still take something from them and pass it on to our children, of that resilience and coping mechanism.
Yeah, we've got to stop wrapping up in cotton wool. Yes, having soft play areas and goggles on eyes and helmets on heads. Toughen them up.
The outpouring of love and respect for the Queen has been incredible. Many of the heartfelt and moving tributes have brought a tear to my eye and truly showcased the best of British. But it's coming up to the end of the show, so I want to show you something a little bit lighter. And it's safe to say probably that Wayne Lineker's tribute doesn't quite fall into that category, but I won't judge. This is his tribute that the clearly unwoke Lineker brother gave at his famous Ibiza beach club. In fact, we're going to bring this to you very shortly. I hope we can get it because have you guys seen this? Have any of you seen this? You've seen it, Ingrid?
No, I haven't, but Victoria
You have,
has.
Victoria. What did you make of it? It was sort of scantily clad.
It's like a scantily clad catwalk show. It put it on so they could see it.
Come on, bring it on.
Yeah, we are trying
I think
to line
it is
it up
quite fun.
right now. We
Girls
hopefully
in
will have it for you very shortly.
outfits.
Just while we're getting that, actually, I want to bring you some more of your brilliant feedback, actually, that we've been receiving throughout the show. Angela says, growing up, I didn't take that much notice of the royal family until Prince Charles got engaged to Diana. Since then, I have grown fonder and fonder of the Queen. Seeing how strong and professional she was made me admire her more over the years. I am so proud to be British, and King Charles will make an amazing king. Audrey had this goodbye. Our Queen slipped quietly away, as was her wish, on a rainbow to be reunited with her beloved Philip. God bless her and long live the King. And Moira said, I will miss the Queen's radiant smile and her dedicated commitment to the British nation. Amen to that. And we'll keep bringing you your amazing feedback throughout the next couple of days. But thankfully, ladies, we do have this Wayne Wild tribute now. Watch.
Italian, Spanish, wherever you are in the world, I think you'll all appreciate that one of the greatest iconic women who's ever left this world left our planet yesterday. Let's hear it for Queen Elizabeth II.
Do you know what, Victoria? I say good on him. I don't think it matters how you pay tribute to the Queen.
Right.
That's appropriate for that sort of nightclub, right?
Yeah.
It comes from a good place.
Oh,
Fair enough.
absolutely. It's having
fun.
a
I think
laugh.
Brits
It's
have got
fun.
a lot of, you know, as as a country, we have a lot of humour.
And the Queen had such a cracking, cheeky
Yeah.
sense of humour.
She would have smiled at that, wouldn't she?
Maybe Prince, I think maybe Prince Philip.
Yeah, I think
would
Prince
have
Philip would have had it on.
But he would have
Prince
smiled
Andrew would
even
have smiled at
bigger.
that. But no, look, I think it has been fascinating, actually, to see how the entire world has been paying tribute to the Queen. And I want to thank all of you, Lady Victoria Harvey, Ingrid Tarrant, Belinda Lucy. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on what is still historic and sad and emotional and actually quite traumatic days for this nation. So I so appreciate it. Thank you, of course, to all of my guests tonight. Thank you to you at home for watching again. Because we are in this special period of mourning, I will be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. till midnight as we continue our dedicated coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Until then, God save the King.